It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
No fear. Here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock. Today, we're talking to Aaron Day. Aaron Day is, let's get to the point to where you can call him an OG. He's an old guard kind of guy. Now, he really came on the scene, notice of a lot of people in the liberty community in 2008. There's the Ron Paul Revolution going on. There's a Free State Project. There's a lot of advocacy, for sound money, that crypto, after the '08 campaign, crypto comes around promising. Now, Aaron and I have worked together on the Zano project, trying to make sure we have a mechanism that's going to survive into the future. We need to have accuracy and truth and money. Oh, my God, what a concept. And then you have the central bank digital currencies that he's been warning about. He started his own podcast here not too long ago that's getting a lot of attention. And then he decides in New Hampshire he's going to run for U.S. Senate to get the message out. Now, of course, whoever he's running up against and the bad guys are all bad guys and different flavors of bad guys. So it doesn't really matter. It's just, they, them, those over there won't leave us alone and ripping us off. And this is what it needs to be paid attention to. He's going to get that attention. And that is his goal. So I'm going to have Aaron. He's also a fellow at the Brownstone Institute. He has some new articles coming out. He's not, they get kind of political and, once more into the breach with Trump and kind of stuff, and he's not, cheerleading his pom-poms, he keeps in his trunk for freedom. But this has been a very interesting time for us to have this conversation. And I should have asked you how long you had, Aaron. How long do you got?
Well, I planned for a couple of hours at least. Not
boom.
I don't have 8, but I got a couple hours.
All right, that's what we need to know. All right, I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself, talk about what you're doing, but give me a chronology. You're not old. I mean, you're what, 40 or something? How old are you?
Well, actually, I'm going to be 50 in April. So,
I want to eat your Wheaties. Or not eat Wheaties. That's probably better off. What I'm going to do is turn it over to you and give your progression. I started here, I went here, I got involved here because you weren't always Aaron Day in their face, or maybe you were, and I don't know. So go ahead, Aaron, introduce yourself. We got lots to talk about.
We do have a lot to talk about. I'm going to try to figure out how to do the elevator pitch of this story, but I guess I'll start with, I was always a pro-liberty guy. I started an Ayn Rand club, an objectivist club in high school. So I started out in that sense, but interestingly, I'd say I was radicalized 3 different times. So I actually dropped out of college. I dropped out of Duke to start my first company in 1995, which was an internet company. And so I would say the first radicalization came because, I'm coming out of this with this ideological view that, America is all about free market capitalism and everything else. And, during the process of my first company, I realized how venture capital actually works and how Wall Street actually works. And so this is the mid 90s. And I realized we don't really have a free market system. We have a crony system. And I won't go into all the details about what happened there, but that was pretty eye-opening to me. Wall Street is disgusting, and venture capitalism is largely venture socialism. They get most of their funding from public pension funds and from university endowments, which is why Silicon Valley is so woke. Silicon Valley is so woke because the largest single investor in venture capital is the California pension system. And what the California pension system does is they tell venture capital funds that are going out and raising money that, oh, well, yeah, we'll invest in your fund, but you have to keep your fund within this many miles of San Francisco. You have to invest in kind of these themes and these trends. And that was really eye-opening to me because it never made sense to me why there were so many tech companies in Silicon Valley and in San Francisco. I mean, it's not like it's a hotbed necessarily of universities. I mean, there's Stanford, but it didn't really make a lot of sense. And then it did make sense when I understood how the money flowed.
They'll keep track of you.
Exactly. So then I started my second company, which was a healthcare company, in 2004. And this was a successful company. We were profitable. We had clients in 43 states. And it was destroyed by Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, and Attorney General Eric Holder. Unlike, friends that I know now and people that we both know in the crypto space, I wasn't explicitly targeted. I was just collateral damage from bad policy. So, I mean, we had a healthcare company that, used financial incentives to reward people for improving their health. It was based on actual outcomes, and it was successful. People were using it. And then Obamacare came in and said, well, you can't use your health plan money to reward people for success. You can only reward them for participation, basically for participation trophies. And so this,
you only reward them for being sick.
Yeah, you can only reward them for self-reporting that they tried to get healthy, but you can't reward them for actually having any measured improvement. It's absolutely, they participation trophied the entire space.
Now describe that philosophy. What is the purpose of it? What was the monetary incentive? What was the philosophical motivation? There's something behind that.
Well, I mean, we were rewarding people, individuals and teams for losing weight, essentially, which is...
No. I mean, them being that's obvious why you would do it, but why would they be against it?
That's actually an interesting one to try to. This is where you end up learning things like that the public health is a death cult, because you start off with this premise that the medical community is there with the intention of trying to improve people's health, and it takes a long time to kind of go through the process and realize that isn't even their fundamental motivation. And by the way, it takes a while to figure that out. In fact, most people still haven't figured it out.
Not even on their list.
And so truly, I remember I spoke at a Harvard bioethics conference, and I was up there and I was quoting Ayn Rand or something like this, and everybody else was sitting around there. No one knew who Ayn Rand was. And so they get into this bioethics thing, and it's like, well, people can't really improve their situation. It's all based on, where you start from. So it would be unfair to reward people for actually making improvements. You can only reward them for trying. This is essentially what they use as the motivation. This is when you see politicians during the Obamacare debate talking about things like this. It all came down to they were using language like fairness. Now, mind you, none of it's true. And in fact, what they're doing is just installing a whole bunch of limiting beliefs in people to basically groom people into thinking that they have no agency and that you can't actually improve your own condition, and therefore must be reliant on them for advice, medication, treatment, and so forth. And that's really what it's all about. At the end, it's all about control and a view. You want to talk about a messed up category. Bioethics is a horrendous category, and it drives a lot of healthcare. You have these bioethicists that come up with these formulas as to what a human life is worth, and they like to sit there. And so a lot of insurance and a lot of everything, who gets care and everything else, all of that is driven from the top down by these bioethicists, and their philosophy is certainly not one that's based on anything resembling individualism or personal agency. It is all about their version of collectivism and how they can kind of force it on people, but using language like fairness as the way to successfully actually push it through the political realm.
Okay, I want to wind back here just a little bit. You mentioned Ayn Rand quite a bit, and you started with Ayn Rand in high school, and I gotta ask why. You know, what motivated you to do that? You know, why were you? I have no idea. You know, what was that about?
Well, I mean, I went to this. Some people call it the dork school, but it was a gifted and talented high school, but it was a public school in Indiana, and so it was kind of an interesting environment. And so it was a residential environment. So we were actually on a college campus for our last 2 years of high school, and I was introduced to Ayn Rand first by my grandmother a long time ago, long before even that point in time. But then my roommate in high school actually was like, "Oh, have you read Anthem or whatever?" And so I read Anthem, and so it turned out there were enough people at that time that we had like 12 people in this objectivist club to talk about these books. So there were enough kind of nerdy people that still read books back in the early 90s that there was enough traction for something like this.
Okay. From an assignment in class?
No assignment in class. No.
See, everybody goes, well, I read Road to Serfdom. I got, radicalized by Rothbard. I, did a little of this, a little of that, and I'm going, Why? Why? You picked up Ayn Rand. Why? Somebody sent it to you in the mail? I mean, why?
No, I have a roommate that's just like, oh, you should read, I recommended this book. And interestingly, my grandmother also had recommended it, even though she was the furthest thing you could possibly imagine from an objectivist. It was weird. She had this Leonard Peikoff book, The Objectivist. I can't even remember what it was called now. Like not The Objectivist Manifesto or something, but it was a pretty dense book. And my dad was an entrepreneur, so I was kind of always interested in entrepreneurship from a young age, and so I was already entrepreneurial at that point, and so reading Rand was good for reinforcing entrepreneurship and individualism. So I was already kind of aligned towards entrepreneurship, and so Rand is pretty good if that's the direction you're going.
Aligned. Why were you more free market or truth, or what is it? Biological? Was it DNA? Was it grandma, grandpa, something? See, I need to understand your worldview from a very young age. To the fact that you do an Ayn Rand club in high school. Oh my God, how often does that happen?
Well, it doesn't happen that often, and I don't know the answer for it, because I will say I was pretty unusual. I look back now, I get these things back. It's like, hey, here's your 30-year reunion, which I didn't go to, and then I look at the pictures from it, and it's like, these are the people that turn out to be the blue hairs. Interestingly, the people from that high school, most of them went on to an academic track, and these are the people that we're usually up against. Overwhelmingly, I look at that picture. I'm like, boy, I'm glad I didn't go to that reunion. That would have turned out to be something somewhat interesting. So I don't know. I mean, my dad was an entrepreneur, but I would say he was more on the Republican side, not necessarily the libertarian side. And no one else in my family was an objectivist. So I don't know exactly how it came about. I got involved with computers when I was 5. I got really interested in. I was really interested in computers. I was interested in entrepreneurship, but I will tell you how far off base this was. I remember in the early 90s thinking that Bill Gates was a libertarian. I mean, this tells you how early this was in the process. I mean, there are all these kind of early stories about Microsoft and Bill Gates kind of being this kind of wild spirit guy out there. And as much as I complained about Silicon Valley, when I experienced it, in the 80s, and when you read about what was going on with early tech, so early tech, even in California, when California was Republican, maybe even libertarian-leaning Republican, which it's hard for anybody to imagine that was actually the case, there was very much a libertarian streak in tech in the 80s and in the 90s. Now, it's the complete opposite. Now, big tech and Silicon Valley in California, this is the technocratic state. This is all about authoritarian control. This is about the censorship industrial complex. But I think at that moment in time, kind of growing up around computers in the 80s, you had kind of this cypherpunk hacker free market capitalism streak. And so I think all of that just kind of compounded and built into this. Now, I wouldn't say I'm an objectivist now. I ended up being the CEO of the Atlas Society for a while, but I wouldn't now call myself an objectivist. But it was very influential at a pretty influential part in.
So how do you identify as a voluntarist or something?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm trying to not even put labels on it because once you align with one particular camp, you may realize, well, there are all these other things.
Then they shift.
I am for free will, so I am for maximizing free will and our ability to exercise our own agency. And
okay, let's go ahead and back where we left off. You go through the healthcare thing. You start to realize, they're bad, and they were bad in high school, and they were bad from the system. They're bad. What is the system that creates this?
What is the system that creates this? Well, so that thinking evolved as well. So I would say, again, first radicalization was that we have cronyism, not free market capitalism. And then when my company was destroyed with Obamacare and Dodd-Frank, my viewpoint at that point was I was radicalized, but I thought, hey, government's incompetent. This was my conclusion that I came to based on that. And so then I became this political activist. I moved to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project in 2009. And I thought, hey, maybe we can solve this politically. I'm like, all right, my business was destroyed by these incompetent politicians. Maybe if, competent people got involved in politics, and this is when Ron Paul was going on and everything else, I'm like, hey, maybe this is the way to do it. And so I spent a lot of time on that. My wife and I both ran a bunch of liberty organizations here in New Hampshire. She ran the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. I ran the Republican Liberty Caucus. We had a super PAC, ran for office, helped get other people elected and everything. And during all of this process, I got introduced to Bitcoin in 2012 through Roger Ver and Ian Freeman, and so started using cryptocurrency. And then I would say I was radicalized. The last time I was radicalized, I mean, it was a little bit before this, but then I started my eyes really opened up to the technocratic threat at Ian Freeman's sentencing hearing. Because it was very clear, and for those who don't know who Ian Freeman is the co-host of Free Talk Live, a nationally syndicated pro-liberty radio show.
Yeah, 200 plus stations, and just spreading the message. They didn't like it none too much.
They didn't like it at all. They were very successful. In fact, I saw some stat that probably more than 10% of the people that moved to the Free State Project found out about it because of Free Talk Live. So Ian has always been kind of radical, using non-compliance, not voting, but using things like staging all kinds of different protests. He's always there, showing up at court hearings, documenting this, trying to expose on camera what's going on. Was early in setting up Bitcoin ATMs, helping merchants set up point of sale systems, and so he was targeted. And they, they're like, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. And they really went after him. Bearcat came in, destroyed his apartment. They confiscated his Bitcoin. 5 different federal departments.
Crashed his studio.
Crashed his studio, the whole 9 yards. And in the end, when sitting through the sentencing hearing, you see up close. I'm obviously, if I'm starting an Ayn Rand club, I'm pretty pessimistic about government at 16. But even still, and even after everything that I've gone through, watching how the DOJ had a complete disregard for the truth, even in the way that they were selectively presenting information, the way that they were playing clips where it's like if you played 2 minutes of the clip, you'd come up with a different conclusion, but we're going to play 40 seconds of it. There was no interest in the truth. And in the end, he's in federal prison for 8 years for conspiracy to commit money laundering. They actually dropped the money laundering charge. And a friend of mine once said, conspiracy is what they charge you with when you're not guilty of anything. It's kind of one of these catch-alls that the government can use to get people. And so then I realized, look, these people are actually malicious. And actually in the process of researching, well, why are they targeting Ian Freeman? Why is the federal government going after specifically people that are involved in crypto that are libertarian leaning, that are pro-freedom? Why are those people? Yeah, you have people that, are doing meme coins or whatever, and the SEC may go after them. But the criminal charges and the real heavy weight of the government going after crypto people was all really focused on these libertarians. And that's when I learned what's going on with first CBDCs. So the crypto crackdown, the reason they went after Ian and then Roger Ver and others was because President Biden signed this executive order 14067, which authorized the U.S. government officially to pursue a CBDC. And if you're going to push a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, a single programmable digital currency that can be censored, you're going to have to get rid of the competition because people aren't going to like it. And so that's why they were targeting people like Roger and people like Ian. So then I realized that the CBDCs are just one part of a bigger technocratic agenda. So once you can control people's money, then you add in social credit systems, then you add in AI surveillance, and now you're talking about, the way I define it is it's the actual loss of free will. So you ask me what my political beliefs are, or not my political beliefs, but beliefs in general. I'd say I'm for free will. And technocracy is the opposite of that. Technocracy is this idea that scientists and engineers, or now to be replaced by AI, know what's best. They can make decisions for you. We're too stupid to make our own decisions, and they're going to enforce this through digital programmable money, surveillance schemes, and social credit systems. And so not only did I realize CBDCs were rapidly accelerating everywhere, which is why the crackdown was going on, then you start digging into everything else. It's like, man, digital IDs are proliferating. By 2027, over half of the planet will be under a digital ID system. AI surveillance this is not just China. We have more surveillance cameras per capita in the United States than China. And so I realized, wow, this is the threat. There's no red versus blue. There's no US versus China. There's one overarching technocratic threat, and there's almost no resistance to it. And actually, since the election, there's zero resistance to it. At least before the election, you had people that would say, well, Klaus Schwab is bad, Bill Gates is bad, the WEF is bad. But after the election, people are like, oh, well, Trump defeated the globalists. Meanwhile, Real ID is live. So we have a digital ID in 12 states. And by the way, the plan is for Real ID to be digital in all 50 states by 2027. We now have Palantir building a AI surveillance database. We have a backdoor CBDC through the Genius Act, and now through some of these other things, this Clarity Act and market structure bill coming out of the U.S. Senate, they're putting together legislation that's going to create digital tokens that represent everything that we own, not just money, right? So a CBDC is a digital token that represents fiat, and a CBDC is issued by a central bank. But now what the government has figured out how to do is to take stable coins, which is also tokenized fiat, but it's issued by private companies, namely Tether and a company called Circle, which makes another stablecoin called USDC. Well, they've taken these popular private stablecoins and put them under the control and financial surveillance of the U.S. Congress and the Federal Reserve. So now it's a backdoor CBDC. Now we've taken a private solution but added the financial surveillance.
Okay, this is what I was always anticipating. I can't get my camera to go. So this is the one thing that I could see coming. Early on, of course, that's how I know you and Roger and, a bunch of the guys in Ian and everything. We were on their network and stuff. And I could see that Bitcoin had humans involved. It had legislation involved. It had force, arrest, going at control. And I go, Bitcoin is just going to be GoldmanSachs.gov coin. I can see it coming, and it's here, and they were screaming for it. They want, we need to get a U.S., stockpile reserve of and kind of have them do it, and Sailor and stuff, go into debt, hawk everything, buy more Bitcoin. It's all about the value. And I'm going, store of value and all this other crap, when it was supposed to be a peer-to-peer digital cash. And what happened was you could see it coming, and a lot of the people that I love and respect, because they made so much money on it, they want to make more. What do we got to do? Oh, we'll go down on Uncle Sam. Yeah, let's do that. And I'm going, this is why we're looking at Xano, is fulfilling of the original promise, that it was anonymous, that it fast, that it was cheap transactions, that it was secure, that. And each one of those traits get chipped away. So we're looking for the crypto technology is awesome. I mean, you can see, how it can be, streamline everything and put it in your hands. It's like, having your own gold and silver kind of thing. And that's how they would argue it. But the whole time, they were trying to incorporate it into the legacy banking system. I could see they were shoehorning crypto into the legacy banking system. If you can't, beat them, make them join you, kind of deal. And it's gone. I can see where this has gone. What's the solution? Now you're going to be advocating this. All of a sudden, let's talk about your Senate race. Aaron goes, you know what we're going to do? I'm going to tell everybody what's up. And this is which is what I do. I use politics as get my soapbox and I got an opinion. And what is it you're trying to accomplish? What are you going to do? Tell me about your Senate race.
Sure. Let me give you a little history about this. So I've done this before. So I ran for U.S. Senate in 2016 for a somewhat similar reason. And basically the whole idea was we were really focused, my wife and I were focused on New Hampshire and what we could do at the state level. And what I learned pretty early on is, well, a lot of people in New Hampshire will like to tell you that New Hampshire runs from the bottom up. It does not. It is controlled from the top down. And largely in New Hampshire, you have the Sununu family pulling the strings on the Republican side. You have the Shaheen family pulling things from the Democrat side. And what they do is they use the first in the nation primary status. New Hampshire has the first primary. It's considered arguably, one of, if not the most important state in determining early on who the nominee might be. And so what ends up happening is you have all of these presidential candidates running through here all of the time. You have all of these campaign managers and everything else. I mean, you get more phone calls and solicitations, and you just randomly run into presidential candidates in New Hampshire. It's part of the DNA of what goes on here. Well, the Sununus and the Shaheens of the world have figured out how to leverage their DC-based contacts to influence state elections as well. And so back to my startup. The company was destroyed because of Obamacare. Well, Obamacare didn't just stop with Obamacare. It then expanded with what's called Medicaid expansion, or Obamacare Medicaid expansion. So I'm here in New Hampshire, which is supposed to be the freest state, in the country, and so on and so forth. And I find that
live free or die state.
The live free or die state, that after 2012, it's a long story, but I'll summarize it like this. After 2012, after how Ron Paul was treated, there was an absolute division. In fact, so many people were so disgusted about what happened to Ron Paul at the convention and everything else, people just quit politics altogether. It was like, we're done with this. Yeah. But there was about a dozen of us that met different, I'd say, faction leaders within the Republican Party in New Hampshire. And so the idea was, well, hey, look, we just lost this thing in 2012. People were surprised by that, I guess. But what are we going to do to regroup? So the consensus was in New Hampshire that, well, we can at least agree that we're all against Obamacare. Well, not 30 days after we had this meeting, the Senate Republicans in New Hampshire put together a plan to push Obamacare Medicaid expansion. So I spent all of this time fighting Obamacare Medicaid expansion because, one, I don't care about federal politics, but I do care about New Hampshire. You can't expand a multi-billion-dollar entitlement and tether yourself even further to Washington, D.C. and think you're getting gains at the state level. It just doesn't work. So I did all kinds of things. We primaried like 8 different state senators. We tried to primary literally every senator that ran for it. We actually flipped a couple of spots. And then it came up for reauthorization because it was one of those things where, well, we're going to just do this temporarily. We've got these federal matching funds, but then we're going to move away from it, right? This was what they said. I'm like, yeah, it's never going to happen. So then I found out that Kelly Ayotte was our U.S. senator at the time, and we had just won in 2014. Our super PAC had won enough votes to basically influence who the Speaker of the House was going to be, and we were pushing for this guy, Bill O'Brien, who was for the repeal of Medicaid expansion. And then we found out that the Sununu family was pushing from the top down, picking somebody else for speaker so that Medicaid expansion would be reauthorized. And the whole thinking of this was, unless Medicaid expansion is reauthorized, Kelly Ayotte will lose her U.S. Senate seat. So my view is, look, if you're going to destroy the state of New Hampshire from the top down to protect one politician in Washington, D.C., here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to run in a primary. I'm going to create an independent slate of candidates, and I'm going to cost you, the Republicans, all 3 of our federal seats. I'm going to cost you both of the congressional seats and the U.S. Senate seat. And so I talked to the chair of the GOP. I gave everybody a year of advance notice on this. And I'm like, at this point, you should know I'm going to do this. Like, I've done enough, stuff here that you should believe me. And, so, well, no, they don't believe that you'll actually do it. They don't believe you're successful. So I did it, and I got 17,742 votes, which is a lot for New Hampshire, in a 4-way race. There was also a Libertarian. Kelly Ayotte lost by 1,000 votes, and it was the most expensive U.S. Senate race per capita at that point in the history of the country. Mm-hmm. So I've done this kind of thing before, and I ended up getting sued. I ended up spending 5.5 years in lawsuits, and whatever. How well it turned out, I've shown that you can influence the race, whether or not the liberty community took advantage of this fact. We can debate. I mean, because now Kelly Ayotte is the governor of New Hampshire, and I would argue that a lot of our people have kowtowed and given up on these big issues. But now here we are. And I haven't voted in a long time. I haven't voted since 2018. And if you've had me on here before, I'm not voting because if you vote for me, I'm going to fix Washington, D.C. or anything like that. I actually have a pretty comprehensive, in fact, probably the most comprehensive campaign site that you'll see at Day2026.com. And what it has on there is it has an AI chat bot with 250 hours of my content. I'm giving away 10 books. The whole point of it is personal empowerment. The whole point of it is no one in DC is going to fix anything. You need to use this time to exit the system and stop being reliant on Washington, D.C. That's essentially the message. Why this is important is, remember we had the 2024 race, and the Libertarians supported Trump on the basis of, at least one of the things was the Ross Ulbricht part. And but there were some other things related to that Trump has not followed through on. Now, some people don't realize he hasn't followed through. For instance, one thing he said is that the war on crypto is over. The war on crypto is anything but over. Mm-hmm. If you are somebody like Ian Freeman, excuse me, let me grab some water here.
Ian Freeman was unique. He and Mark Edge lived in Florida doing shows, and they saw the Free State Project thing. They go, oh, we know what we're doing. So they move up to Keene, and the Keeniacs. I mean, every couch surfing libertarian on the planet goes up there, and it was they were emphasizing libertarianism, freedom oriented, the Lovolution saturated the entire liberty community, and for the first time, he made the Federal Reserve a presidential national issue, and people got educated. That was one of the best things of the whole thing. And our goal in doing the Lovolution was, how long could we keep them up there? And we got to do it again in 12. Okay, we'll do it again. And it was general public opinion has shifted your way, and those in opposition to freedom's answer was the question, they got outed, and you helped with that a lot.
Yeah, well, so, but the war on crypto. Sorry about the coughing there. The war on crypto isn't over. So Ian is still in prison. Roger, honestly, he's silenced. So I'm grateful that he's not in prison, but this was not an optimal outcome, in my opinion. I mean, in my opinion, he should have been pardoned. But you also have Roman Storm, you have the Samurai developers, you have people that wrote open source code that protect our Fourth Amendment rights. These people have been prosecuted and convicted under Trump. Those are the real crypto people. The Hawk Tuah girl and the people doing meme coins and all this other stuff, that's not real crypto. And those people, getting a pass, that doesn't do anything for human freedom. That doesn't do anything for crypto. So he's not followed through on that. But more importantly, as I mentioned earlier on, technocracy has flourished under Trump with the backdoor CBDCs and digital IDs to real ID and all of this other stuff. Now, in New Hampshire, so it looks like the Republicans are going to lose control of the House, or maybe they already have. It's razor thin, but it doesn't look good for the election. They may also lose the Senate. And it turns out, once again, New Hampshire is going to be a battleground state. Now, going back to all of this, I mentioned the Sununu family has been the ones pulling the strings on the Republican side. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Sununu family, John Sununu, the father, was the chief of staff to George H.W. Bush. And so he has, that's the kind of brand of republicanism that we have. And he was previously the governor of the state. John E. Sununu was a U.S. senator once before. Now, I remember this right before moving to New Hampshire. And in 2008, because, again, my company was being destroyed by this, I remember sitting there as a dorky guy would do in 2008. I was watching C-SPAN during the whole TARP bank bailout debate. And you may recall the first time that TARP went up for a vote in the Senate, it failed. It failed by like a razor-thin margin. But at this point in time, this is right before I'd moved to New Hampshire. If you're watching C-SPAN, before this TARP vote, you'll see the two U.S. senators from New Hampshire, Judd Gregg and John E. Sununu, and they're presented as the most libertarian guys in the U.S. Senate. And largely up to that point, a lot of their speeches were libertarian-ish, relative to the rest of the U.S. Senate. Lo and behold, they flipped their votes. They were two of the decisive votes to pass the TARP bailout bill, which, by the way, is a disaster. Again, I don't know what percentage of people lost their homes. No one went to jail. No penalties at all. The banks got bailed out. Classic, classic socialization of losses for the big banks. And John E. Sununu ended up becoming the chair of the TARP Oversight Board, and then ended up becoming the chair of a World Economic Forum financial board because of his work on this TARP Oversight Board. So then you dig into this guy more. He voted for the Patriot Act because again, he was there early on. He voted for the Patriot Act. He voted for Real ID. So I'm looking at this guy and like, this guy embodies technocracy. In fact, it's hard to find many people that have been on the wrong side of so many influential pieces of legislation that have advanced the surveillance state. So what did he do? He lost his election after that, and then he became a political lobbyist. He went to Washington, D.C. and became a lobbyist. He worked for Big Pharma, and he worked for all these other things. So this is the guy who is the hand-picked guy. He'll sail through the primaries because of the family name and everything else. And now people are sitting here thinking that this guy is somehow better than the Democrat, which the Democrat's bad, just party line technocrat, which you expect. But Sununu's worse. Sununu's more dangerous because he's the kind of guy who, when they go to reauthorize the Patriot Act, he comes in and acts like a civil libertarian and then adds a couple of clauses at the end in an amendment to get the votes to get the thing over the finish line. He's actually much more dangerous because he manages to make something that's completely horrendous, packageable, and marketable. So I'm like, okay, this is a great opportunity to hit right at the heart of the control system here in New Hampshire, but use it as a platform to educate people about technocracy and showcase and highlight both of their votes. And again, the solution is, don't vote for me to fix Washington, D.C. Stop believing anybody in Washington, D.C. is going to fix your problems, Republican or Democrat. And these two have a great record. So my campaign, if I ultimately run, right now I'm just exploring, is going to be to go around the state doing the same stuff that I've been doing, giving workshops about technocracy, showing people how to use privacy coins, showing people how to use Zano, showing people how to use freedom dollars, showing people how to exit the medical system and use medical tourism. It's all going to be the same thing. It's all going to be about empowerment, while at the same time educating people that red versus blue is a fake division and that it's all one technocracy and that we're running out of time.
Here in Arizona, we had, when they did the TARP, it was John Shadegg I ran against for Congress 3 times in the late 90s. And it was, nope, everybody votes no, I'm not going to have the TARP. And I remember I have a polling option that I use on Freedom's Phoenix, and I put the poll up. And I stop after 200. Because once you get a little bit past that, then the trolls come in and they want to weight the survey, that kind of thing. And the options were, all right, is the TARP going to be reintroduced and passed in a day, a week, a month? I mean, how this is going to go pretty quick. It was overwhelming. They already got it written and we're ready to go. John Shadegg voted against it, but then he came back because you have to reintroduce the bill by someone that voted against it. That's the only way it can come back. Well, he was tapped for that. And we did a bunch of sides, nationalization of the economy isn't fascist when I do it, John S.S. Shadegg. I mean, we did a bunch of sides. Long story, but hammered the crap out of it, and he pulled out of the next race. And it was because it was just like what you're doing. We were emphasizing what was really going on and that this was inevitable. They were going to bail out the system. They don't care about money or value or freedom or the people. It's the system is everything. So to protect the system, what do they always do? They print money. China has just come up with, gazillions of dollars, trillions of dollars that they, I remember we had a shirt and it said the Fed did it. And then below it, it had a dollar sign and an arrow going down. And I asked one of the activists, the Fed did it. What'd they do? Printed money and bought gold with it. Oh, well, that's exactly what's going on. Well, China's doing it now. But they buying up silver and gold like crazy. So what are they going to do? They just convert over to all that money is going into a silver or gold-backed currency, which they're calling the unit, the BRICS payment system. And it really started when they froze assets of Russia. When they go, wait. This treasuries that we're buying, this debt that we're getting, and you can keep it? What kind of crap is that? So it's faith in the system. And they're going to keep trying to perpetuate the system until they can't. When's that coming?
I mean, I think it's coming sooner rather than later. Things seem to be hyper accelerating this year. I mean, again, when you look at what's going on with digital IDs, we're talking about the next year or two. What they're putting in place is the AI surveillance and tracking system so that when there is a collapse, they can exert authoritarian control. And they're doing great at that. So I don't know what the actual, when everything blows up, looks like because of the control system that they're putting in. I think that they're figuring out a way to soft pedal and push us into things like UBI. In fact, that's already, when you look at these Trump dividends, even you look at the stimulus package under COVID, you now have the crypto
universal basic income, which now they're marketing as universal high income. We lied. We're going to give you a bunch of money.
Yeah, exactly. So Musk is pushing this. Is, by the way, this is one of the core tenets of technocracy. Elon Musk is absolutely a technocrat. His grandfather was the head of the technocrat party. Musk is explicitly for UBI. He's for energy credits. He's for AI-based governance. He's for all of it explicitly. And I've done multiple podcasts on this, him in his own words. And now we see he's launching X payments, which he says that he thinks can basically will end up doing half of the world's financial transactions. That was the quote that I saw from this morning. So that's happening, really quickly. But I think that the whole U.S. versus China or BRICS thing, all of that is theater. It is all one global technocracy in the end, and I think that they get a lot of mileage out of this U.S.-China division. And this is true. You look at what they're doing with AI, and now we have a government policy on pushing AI federally, and we have things like Operation Stargate, which is Larry Ellison from Oracle and Open AI, and Sam Altman and Palantir is in there as well. And they tried to position this as a national security issue for the United States. Well, all of those are global technocratic corporations, and all of those corporations do business in China. So what they're doing is they're using patriotism as a way to get taxpayers to fund and subsidize global technocratic corporations to build out an AI surveillance infrastructure. This is exactly what's going on. Unfortunately, this stuff works. These kinds of divisions work. So now we're going to use the ICE thing in Minneapolis. Whatever side people are on this, what I will tell you is what we're going to end up getting is more surveillance of American citizens. That's the end game of every one of these little distractions. Every one of these points is we end up gladly accepting more surveillance on innocent people. This is Patriot Act, TARP, CARES Act, all of these things always impose more financial surveillance, more surveillance in general, and they never get reversed. And that's pretty much what we are dealing with right now. So I don't know the timing or exactly how it's going to happen, but they're building UBI in. So, are we going to get a stimulus check next? You have Michael Dell giving, every kid under the age of under the age of 10, $250. You have Coinbase, the crypto exchange, giving people in New York UBI. So they are already grooming us. And it's not Democrats. It's not just Andrew Yang pushing this. You have the Trump administration kind of pushing these ideas. They're even pushing a sovereign wealth fund. Trump signed an executive order for a sovereign wealth fund, meaning that the federal government will be investing in and buying assets. So the U.S. government now owns like 9.99% of Intel. We bought something called Lithium Americas. Now, it's just an executive order. There's no congressional approval, but they're using every loophole that they can to start building a sovereign wealth fund anyway. Well, sovereign wealth funds control 7% of the world's assets, but these are mostly monarchies and dictatorships around the world. A sovereign wealth fund is completely anti-American, completely anti-free market, and yet, have you ever seen any outrage about a sovereign wealth fund? I mean, we may in our circles, but there's no broad-based opposition to a sovereign wealth fund. So we are facing this technocracy. As I said, it turns out the 2024 election was technocracy with resistance versus technocracy without resistance, and technocracy without resistance won, and people still don't realize it. That's kind of the state of where we are. So anyway, back to this. If I can use this New Hampshire Senate race as potentially a race that could decide whether the Republicans keep control of the Senate, as a platform to educate people about technocracy, and as a platform to show people and give people tools to make themselves personally immune from federal government, then I feel like this is kind of a Hail Mary. This is where we're at. This is how bad this is. This is how urgent this is. And as you know, I've tried to do everything else that I can, workshops all over the place, podcasts, all the other things that I've done. But, we need every possible outside of the box technique that we can come up with to raise awareness, because I think the general population is clueless about what's actually going on.
Why? Is it, media that's controlled? Is it the politics that's controlled? Is it the education system that's controlled? It's everything. And what's the solution? I'm always like, it's going to be a food thing. Sooner or later, this is going to manifest itself in food's too expensive, food's too unavailable, and no, that'll never happen. Really? You remember the lockdown? You remember, COVID? You remember you got to have an ID for it and everything, and you're not allowed unless. And then you get Gates and these guys coming out and saying, we're just going to inconvenience you into compliance. So wondering where the break is. Is it, this silver thing that's going on now is something that we've all anticipated and knew, and a lot of us are silver stackers, and just because it represents the fall of the system. And how fragile is the system? What do you think?
I think the system is exceptionally fragile. In fact, I've argued the economy probably collapsed 10 years ago, but people are so unaware and the markets are so rigged that they're able to keep it going that long. Because you see somebody like Michael Burry, the guy from the Big Short is about, the guy that shorted the housing industry and everything else. Well, I like to joke he's called 100 out of the last 1 financial collapses. He's been saying the sky's falling ever since, and it doesn't happen. And I think that what he's missing in his analysis is the fact that the markets are completely rigged. People own ETFs, 401ks, they have retirement funds. They don't exercise their own voting rights or make their own individual investments. Most of these investments are now controlled by BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And so it's not individuals there, predicting what the market's going to do or making individual investments. It's these huge funds. And so they can kick the can and keep things going and manipulate it for longer than people will.
Until they can't.
Until they can't. But I actually put together a website called ownnothing.org to get at the heart of, why people are unaware of this. And what I found on all of this is that, I'm basically putting together a bunch of different tools where you can diagnose and come up with your own sovereignty score. How much of your own life, do you own? Do you own your money? Do you own your investments? Do you own your property? Do you own the contracts that you sign? So on and so forth. How much control does the government have? What do schools look like? That's a whole other area in terms of public schools and the extent to which our kids are being surveilled. But I think the heart of the issue comes to attention. Our attention has been hijacked. We're not in control of our own attention. And this happens, I've even got a little chart on here that shows, from the time you're 0 to 7, whatever programming you get, whatever people tell you, you have no ability to consciously filter that. So if somebody's telling you you're not good enough or whatever it happens to be, those become part of your personality. So you have kind of and in fact, I've created this, are you an NPC? Are you a non-player character survey? Once you get past 7, then you get through, what we call institutional capture. So from 7 to 18, most people, if you're going to public school, you're then going to have public school indoctrination, which is 6+ hours a day, 180 days a year for 12 years. Then once you get out of that system, now you're you were in the broadcast era where you had the media mass installing the same scripts, and then that kind of evolved and morphed into cable, which was basically, again, nothing objective about that. You're just kind of selection biased into different camps. Yeah. But now we're in the algorithmic age, and now our programming is coming from big tech. So if you factor all these different things that are coming for our attention at various stages in our life, I actually would say it would be pretty difficult for most people to be aware of what's going on, because most people are just following kind of the standard path here, and all of these institutions have been geared towards pushing one narrative and keeping people within this similar framework. So the challenge is getting people to snap out of that framework, and that's difficult. But I think in some respects it's gotten worse. I'll give you an example on this. I get really frustrated, and no matter how I try to say it, and unfortunately my biggest platform is still X, right? So this is the irony of this. There are a lot of people out there that, one, have given up their personal agency and opted instead for these white knights, right? So it's like, I don't know if you saw these things. People were wearing these T-shirts where it's like Trump and Tulsi Gabbard and Vivek and J.D. Vance, and it's like the Avengers. They actually tried to position this thing as like a superhero installation of people. RFK Jr., these people are gonna solve all of your problems. Well, no one's gonna solve your problems. No one was ever gonna solve all your problems, but in particular, these guys are not gonna solve your problems. And so we think about where we are now. So I was fighting CBDCs. I've been fighting CBDCs, now broader technocracy, for 3 or 4 years exclusively. And before the election, people were worried about CBDCs. Now Trump signs an executive order and people are like, well, we don't have to worry about that anymore, not even realizing that the Genius Act is a backdoor CBDC that's even worse than a CBDC because it's being rolled out at scale with no resistance. And so my job has become a lot more difficult because now I have to explain nuance. Now I have to explain the difference between a CBDC and a private issued stable coin. Like there's no real quick answer to it. I mean, you can give a thumbnail, but then people won't believe the thumbnail, and will they spend enough time to understand the nuance? But one of the biggest psyops in this whole thing are these people that say, thank God Elon Musk saved free speech. This is how bad the propaganda is. They truly believe, to this day, they still parrot, and of course, Musk boosts his own algorithm to further this narrative, that he bought X for $44 billion, Twitter for $44 billion to save free speech. He has done no such thing. Well, actually, the funny thing is one of the most viral tweet I've ever had was I did an analysis of the new terms of service for X. So, I mean, I was logged on to X one day about a month or so ago, and it said, hey, coming January the 15th, here are the new terms of service. The new terms of service are, well, we can comply with law enforcement and give them all of your information, including your direct messages at our own discretion. We own all of your content. We can use all of your information to train our AI. If you do anything, including trying to reverse engineer what censorship may be going on, you are automatically violating the terms of service. If you sue us, all of the disputes will go through this one particular court in Texas, and the maximum damages are like $100. Right. So I laid out this entire just analysis of the terms of service. This is not a free speech platform. And there's also a term in there that says that they basically they can tweak the algorithm however they want. So you have a whole bunch of people who think that we dodged a bullet. We came out of the COVID thing and now Elon saved free speech. There are people that actually think that we're winning. And they think that Elon Musk is all about free speech. I played this clip time and time again. There's Elon Musk sitting at a table at an office with 3 or 4 other people, and he says explicitly he bought Twitter to basically rip off WeChat. WeChat is it's an everything app in China that people use to pay their bills. It's a social media tool. It's also tied into social credit systems. It's basically one of the key components of a social credit system in China. Elon Musk bought Twitter to rip it off and basically build a better version of it. He said it explicitly. So we have this gulf, and I did a thing on that. I think Americans are probably the most brainwashed people on the planet in terms of our perception of how free we are and how great we are at various things versus the objective reality of it. There was a TV show called The Newsroom that Aaron Sorkin was the writer for, who also did The West Wing. And there's this one clip that went viral in 2012 where Jeff Daniels, who's the main news anchor, main character in the program, is doing this town hall, and he's asked why America is the greatest country in the world, and he lists off we're not. He's like the only thing that we're. And so that clip went viral, and so then I looked up, okay, well, how are we doing based on the list? He's like, here's where we are in math, here's where we are in healthcare and everything else. We've deteriorated on all of the objective measurements, even since he gave that clip. It's so bad. People like to talk a lot about China, and Mike Adams helped educate me on this. The U.S. is lagging China in 57 out of 64 technology categories. We are not the most innovative country in the world at all, and it's not even close. So we sit here and you talk to an average American or whatever, and they think that we have free speech and we're ranked number 1. I think we're not even in the top 25 for free speech. We were ranked 38th in healthcare. We're not on the top for innovation. And so on all of these metrics, and so we have been propagandized and don't even know it. So it's hard to break out of that. What I'm coming up with is a series of tools to help diagnose this for people, to help people understand, hey, you don't own those investments. You should learn about the great taking. You already don't vote your shares. And when there's a financial collapse, all of the big banks are going to own the financial interest. You've already given up your voting rights. And through laws that were happened at the state level and bankruptcy and everything else, the 4 big banks are going to end up owning your investments. You don't own that. You don't own the money in your bank account. Do you really own your house if you're paying property taxes and all of these other things? Let's look at, do you even own music anymore? Or is everything a subscription service? Do you own your house? Do you own your car? Do you own any of these assets? Because one of the themes that I'm trying to make for people is there are a lot of people are like, well, we want to defend the American way, or we want to defend what we've got. And, I called it ownnothing.org because when you dig into it, you already own nothing. You just don't realize it. And the quicker we can get people to realize they've got nothing left to lose by actually, pursuing freedom and taking back our sovereignty, people are operating out of a state of fear, and that state of fear is based on ignorance and propaganda. But it's hard to cut through it because the challenge that we have now is people think Musk is the white knight. People think, probably not quite so much that Peter Thiel's a great guy, but they're willing to accept Palantir surveillance. We can sit there and say, well, the military and industrial complex is bad, but Palantir is great because, these are Silicon Valley guys, right? I mean, it's so the propaganda is deeper and there's no resistance. And so, again, the solution to this is one person at a time, and it's people opting out of the system, not voting your way out of the system, but stopping the use of the dollar. Use gold, use silver, use privacy coins. Do not use cryptocurrencies that are on a transparent, trackable ledger. One of the other things that we've launched, which we're making refinements to, but back to this whole healthcare space, we've launched a medical tourism website, and we're actually kind of promoting 3 different ideas. So it's called oasara.com, OASARA.com. And what I like to say to people is that you can do 3 things right away to dramatically improve your situation with respect to healthcare. One,
Hey, wait a minute. Go ahead and give me that site. I'll pull it up. What was it again?
OASARA.com.
Okay, go ahead.
And so there are 3 things that people can do. By the way, we had this shutdown. Remember, my whole really getting pissed at the government started in 2008 with Obamacare, but it hasn't stopped. The shutdown that we recently had was largely over healthcare and largely over Obamacare, and whether or not to renew these things and so on and so forth. And so you see these politicians debating, well, here's what we should do. You should be able to buy insurance across state lines and all this other stuff. None of this addresses any root cause of anything. Insurance is a scam. Insurance is not a business in any way, shape, or form. But what you find when you start investigating medical tourism is you can go overseas and save, on average, 80%, but roughly 70 to 90% on procedures. This includes the travel costs, right? So this is how out of bounds and how overpriced our system is. And it's not because we're leading in innovation. It's basically all fraud and all middlemen and politicians in the middle of this. So what we put together to start is a site and a chatbot you can go through and you can tell it what your condition is, and it has all of this data on 518 different medical facilities globally. And we're not talking about cosmetic procedures only, which is what most people think about when they think about medical tourism, or third-rate doctors. We are so, going back to this, how propagandized we are. I mean, you can get complex heart bypass surgery in India from a Harvard-trained or Johns Hopkins-trained doctor who got trained here and then realized the system's a scam. You can get that for $7,900 in India with better outcomes and lower infection rates than at the Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic. There are cancer treatments you can get overseas that aren't even available here because of the FDA. There's a place in Mexico called Molar City. It's a town of about 5,000 people. 350 of them are dentists. So it's obviously that's the highest per capita of dentists, but it's a location you go to and save 80%
which a lot of people here in Arizona do on a regular basis. They even have buses from retirement communities that go down. They get all their teeth done in a day. I mean, it's amazing.
It's amazing, and Thailand, it turns out, is the biggest medical tourism destination in the world. It's $100 billion a year industry. 8.7 billion is through Thailand. And so you can get, again, complex medical procedures. You can go to Turkey and get a full executive workup and get every possible test that you want done in over a 2 to 3 day period of time at 10% of the cost here. If you want to do IVF, for whatever reason, again, this is just how the market works, Czechoslovakia is actually the best place in the world for that. So the idea, people don't know that. People think that they only think that what's available is, well, gee, what doctor is available through my HMO. You have no choice or decision. People think they have no choice or decision, but here's the kicker. Where I'm kind of promoting 3 things related to this. And by the way, I don't have a business model for this. So I've just put together this information because I really want to give people choice in the system. But I'll explain some of the things that we're working into this. The most important thing people can do is if you have assets, form a medical trust. Here's why. 2/3 of all bankruptcies in the United States are due to medical bills. Every minute, somebody in the United States files for bankruptcy because of medical bills. And you might think, based on the propaganda, this is why we need to have insurance. This is why we needed to have Obamacare to protect these people. 75% of those bankruptcies, medical bankruptcies, are people who had insurance. Healthcare insurance does not provide catastrophic coverage. It does not prevent medical bankruptcies. It is an absolute scam. 77% of the people that file for medical bankruptcy are homeowners. Most of them are college educated. The system is an absolute scam. When you see how pricing works, there's something called a charge master. So each hospital has a price list of how much services cost, how much an alcohol swab costs, how much an aspirin costs. And up until 2021, they weren't allowed to disclose this information. Then there was a law passed by Congress, here we go again, that said, well, now hospitals are required to provide pricing information and provide transparency. Well, it turns out I've collected the database on all of them. 85.7% of hospitals refuse to provide pricing information and instead opt to pay a $300 a day penalty. Why is that? Because when you actually dig into, and we have this on the website as well, you can, under the Learn section, you can see, for instance, Tylenol costs 10 cents per pill. One hospital charges $37, a 37,000% markup. Another hospital charges $23 for an alcohol swab. But here's the thing, you can't know this information in advance. And when you get presented with your bill, you have no ability to negotiate or do anything about it. So this is why people are filing for medical bankruptcy. We have literally no transparency and no recourse. And insurance, because of Obamacare, under Obamacare, insurance companies actually get paid a percentage of the actual costs. So they have an incentive for the healthcare cost to be higher because they get a fixed percentage of the medical bills. It is, you couldn't design a worse system, and it has nothing to do. So anyway, the first thing you do is you form a medical trust to protect your assets so that the hospital and big pharma can't steal your house if you end up in one of these situations where there's an emergency situation and you're presented with a bill that you couldn't have known the price in advance. So we have all kinds of tools on there to help people learn about that. And on that front, and I know you know this and appreciate this as well, a lot of people are like, well, hey, I live in New Jersey. What are the laws like for medical trusts in New Jersey? You don't have to use your own state's laws. You can form medical trusts in other states, just like people form corporations in Delaware or Wyoming or other states. You can form medical trusts. And there are some states that are better than others. South Dakota is probably the best state because you can be the beneficiary of your own trust. And there are all kinds of more favorable. I provide all of that information on the website as well. And you don't have to hire an expensive lawyer to do this either. You can use something like LegalZoom for $50 to $150. You can create a medical trust online. So what I'm saying is if we want to like chip away at these systems, right? Yes, stop using their money. But I'll tell you, the healthcare thing is something that keeps people. How many people out there have jobs they hate that are absolutely soul crushing, only to have insurance? Because since World War II, insurance is tied to employment, and this is because we had wage caps and everything else during World War II, and the only way corporations like GM could compete was by offering health insurance. Well, so now you have people that have jobs they don't like for insurance that will not protect them from medical bankruptcy, so that they can earn retirement and hopefully retire at 65 through these 401ks and ETFs that own stocks that they don't even own, they don't even vote, in companies that are building their digital prison. This is actually the state of affairs in the U.S. This is the average situation. People are living lives of quiet desperation. Form a medical trust, cancel insurance, which you can only do once a year during open enrollment, and look into medical tourism if you need a procedure. That will take a big dent out of the system. If we could get a movement of people to start shielding their assets from these ghouls and to start exiting the system, you're not going to reform it. The Republicans have this guy, Rick Scott. He's the senator from Florida. He's like the main guy pushing the Republican reform bill. This guy was involved in the largest Medicare fraud case. He was the CEO of a company called HCA. He was the CEO of this company. It was the largest ever at the time Medicare fraud case. These are the people that are sitting out there saying, oh, look at all this stuff in Somalia. Hey, why don't you look at your lead senator who's drafting the pro-insurance bill? Politics is not going to fix this. None of the politicians even understand the root cause or are even connected to solving a root cause issue. Fundamentally, you're responsible for your own health, and we need to take back our own health. Now, one of the things that I'm doing with this is a big opportunity for Zano and for Freedom Dollar, because you have $100 billion worth of these transactions happening every year. But there are challenges with payments. So if you're going to go get a $15,000 surgery done and you go to use PayPal, or you go to send an international wire, or you go to your bank, you're going to have all kinds of issues with this. And these medical providers don't necessarily want you using credit cards anyway, because then you could have chargebacks and everything else. So the one thing that I am doing with this, we're giving away all of the information. I'm not involved in the transactions. I don't handle any transactions. We're not getting transaction fees. But when you find and you use these tools to research a medical tourism destination, you can send an email through the system, and then it reaches out to the facility. And then in the email, it says it makes the facility aware of the fact that you have Freedom Dollar and Zano as a payment option. I think Freedom Dollar is probably more interesting at this point in time, just because they like to get paid in dollars. Now we can talk about hopefully that theme and that trend ends at some point, but it isn't going to end immediately. And so this is a way for them to get paid in something that is pegged to the US dollar, but with no financial censorship whatsoever. So right now I view this as a good avenue to introduce.
Well, go ahead and describe the Freedom Dollar. You just throw that out there. Nobody knows what you're talking about.
Sure. Freedom Dollar. So the US passed this Genius Act, and the Genius Act is it's what's called a stablecoin bill. So now if you're Tether, which is the most popular, or USDC, the second most popular stablecoin, you are now subject to the financial surveillance from the U.S. Congress. So all of the Bank Secrecy Act stuff, KYC, anti-money laundering stuff, now that all applies to these stablecoins. The other thing that they've done through this bill is they're requiring that stablecoin issuers back their stablecoins with U.S. treasuries. So I'll explain what this means. So a stablecoin is where one token represents $1, but it doesn't have to be backed by dollars. You could back it by gold or silver or Bitcoin or whatever, any basket of assets. So long as you have more assets than to back one token equaling $1. And so in the past, historically, and I'm not going to say that Tether and USDC have been great, because Tether's never been able to pass an audit, but they haven't been backed exclusively by treasuries. Well, one of the things that the Trump administration and Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, realized is, well, hey, if we force these stablecoin issuers to back their stablecoins with only treasuries, we can sell $2 trillion worth of treasuries, at least. So in other words, we can expand the debt. We can spend $2 trillion additional dollars by forcing these stablecoins to be backed by U.S.
Well, it's just what they've done, haven't they?
They've done that, and this is what's going on. And again, going back to the whole, we got to fight the propaganda war here, because there are people, and I'm writing this article about this because I'm actually doing some research on this. I see these things in my feed where it's like 10,000 people like this post about the Genius Act. I'm pretty sure, and I'm doing the analysis on this, that all of this is fake. And I'm tracking down who the lobbyists are, who these crypto publications are, who are funded by the companies that are backing these lobbyists. I think these are bot farms. I don't think that there's a big movement of actual people out there that are like, yeah, man, the Genius Act is waving the flag, and this is really pro-America. Or maybe there are these people, and I'm going to be even more demoralized about it. But the truth is, this is how Congress sold it. So Congress was talking about how, you hear these people talk about, well, America is going to be the leading center for crypto in the world and everything else. But what we're leading is in digital financial surveillance. So back to what Freedom Dollar is. Freedom Dollar is a stable coin, but it's built on Zano. So it is a token like any other token that you can create on Zano that has, Monero level privacy. So it can't be tracked. And one thing that Tether and USDC are already trackable. They're seized constantly. Every week you see multiple notices of, the latest one I saw was $186 million worth of Tether was frozen. Law enforcement has been working with these even before the Genius Act. So your Tether and your USDC is trackable and censorable already. That's not how Freedom Dollar works. It's a privacy token, so it can't be tracked. It can't be frozen. And additionally, it's not backed by U.S. dollars or U.S. treasuries. It is what's called an algorithmic stablecoin. So what actually backs Freedom Dollar is over-collateralized Zano. So there's nothing here to shut down. There's no central authority to shut down. There's no bank account that can be seized. It runs algorithmically based on over-collateralized Zano. And you may say, well, these cryptocurrencies are volatile, and what's going to protect that is it based on wild speculation? One of the things that I've mentioned before that I find the most compelling about Zano is that every Zano itself and every token created on Zano, so whether you are using Freedom Dollar or you're using Confidential Layer, which we can talk about later, but which is a way for you to basically tokenize your Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana and make it private and spendable. Anytime you use Zano or a token created on Zano, you burn Zano. There's a 0.01 Zano transaction fee. Why this is important is, unlike Bitcoin, there's no fixed supply of Zano. There's one new Zano created every minute. But once Zano reaches 144,000 transactions per day, it actually becomes deflationary because there's more coming out of the supply based on these transaction fees than is being minted. So in other words, the more people use Zano and the more people use tokens created on Zano, the supply begins to decrease as the demand increases. So this isn't based on speculation. The price appreciation is actually based on use, based on supply and demand, which is why, to me, it's a fascinating concept as an algorithmic stablecoin. It's not based on speculation. It's based on use.
And where can it be used?
Well, it can be used at OSR. So moving forward, I think OSR is a big vector for this. So we're trying to open up a 100.
Whoa! Don't give me acronyms. OSR is what?
OSR, the medical tourism site that I just talked about.
Oh, okay, I got it. All right.
But you can use it right now with a Zbeck MasterCard. So this is a debit card that you can actually load with Freedom Dollar and spend anywhere MasterCard is available. Now, again, these are interim solutions. People are going to be like, well, now MasterCard's involved. But this is a way. I live on crypto day to day. So this is actually
Now you've done that since what, 19 or something? I mean, you just said, "Nah, I'm done. I'm out. I'm crypto."
Yeah, which has been a challenge. And, it involves using different crypto debit cards, different cryptocurrencies, and there's been a lot of volatility.
And it used to be easier. It's getting more difficult.
It has been until now. Actually, the easiest situation that I have right now is now with the ZBEC MasterCard, because you can do a whole variety of things. Like you can buy gift certificates. So prior to the ZBEC MasterCard thing, I could use cryptocurrency, I could use Zano, and I could, even when I'm traveling, I could go to hotels.com and I could get my hotel. You could go to various airlines and buy gift certificates with Zano to handle that. And then, increasingly you try to do, more direct peer-to-peer transactions as more people become aware of it. Merchants now can use something called AllPay, which is a point-of-sale system that you can integrate into WooCommerce. So, there are 8 million businesses around the world that use WooCommerce and WordPress. And so now through AllPay, you can accept Zano and Freedom Dollar. So it's building. And, and obviously you've had me on here really early in this process. Most of the stuff we're talking about right now didn't exist when we were talking about this a year or so ago. So now it's increasingly the case. But yeah, I mean, I've been traveling a lot. We just got back from Mexico. We're going to be going to Mexico again. I don't know if you're going to Anarchapulco.
Yeah, I'm speaking.
I don't know if I'm going. I'm trying to work out the logistics on that. But then we're going to Portugal, whatever, and we do international stuff, and we're able to use some combination of gift certificates or now the ZBEC debit card. So it is easier now with these tools than it has been for me since 2019. But that wasn't the case 9 months ago. 9 months ago was actually more challenging. So hopefully this will be the case, and then hopefully more merchants will start accepting it. More people will engage.
Do you feel an attack coming on that? Oh, whoa! They're slipping out of the system. We're not, and it's done.
You always assume that's going to happen. You see that in Europe, they're essentially banning privacy coins. That just happened. Again, you can't stop a privacy coin. In many cases, if you look at the price of Monero, these attacks actually have done pretty well in terms of price appreciation. But yeah, the attacks are absolutely going to happen. We have to expect that the attacks are going to happen. I mean, you can't look at the fact that people, going back to the war on crypto, you have the Tornado Cash guy, you have Roman Storm, you have the Samurai developers. People that develop open source privacy software are still being thrown in prison. So we know we're over the target, and we know there is going to be an attack. That's the beauty of privacy coins, is that at least, depending on which one you're using, it's an upgrade from what you earlier described. It's true. Bitcoin has been captured. I didn't even know if Bitcoin was ever. Bitcoin may have been a psyop. Right. I'm not sold one way or the other on that, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, look, let's face it. It's a transparent ledger where everything's tracked. I mean, that's probably not a good idea from the beginning. The fact that it wasn't privacy first is not a good indicator. But in any event, where we are now, and if you're using these privacy first blockchains, we've got some time, but they're absolutely going to attack it. This is why this market structure bill, the Clarity Act, and the new stuff that's about to pass. I mean, it almost passed last week. And I've got a post that actually did pretty well. It has over 650,000 views on it, where I broke down this market structure bill. But it's all financial surveillance. All of the stuff that through crypto exchanges is going to be tracked. It's going to add regulation to DeFi. They're not going to allow you to earn what yield or interest on stable coins. I mean, it's a combination win for banks, and it's a win for Coinbase, for one or two specific crypto exchanges. And this is what I'm trying to. As I'm writing this article, I'm doing research on this, so we'll see what my research shows. But my early research suggests that a lot of this is fake. When I go online, I see people trying to. It's kind of like the Avenger thing with Vivek and RFK, right? They're trying to do this with Brian Armstrong is defending freedom and defending crypto. Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, is trying to use the force of the state to defend a moat to block out competitors for Coinbase. He's not promoting privacy. He's not promoting freedom. He's not promoting crypto. So when I see these images and these crypto publications pushing this. I'm like, is there somebody wrote an article about this? Did they read the bill? I mean, the latest one's only 278 pages. You can use AI to help if you don't want to read it yourself, or you can actually scan it because, the headings it's not too hard to even, I mean, if you're in a crypto publication, you could at least try to read the bill. There's no way you're going to come up with these conclusions that this is pro crypto. So everybody's sitting around and it's like, oh yeah, the fuel's coming and the market run, the bull run is about to happen. It's about to be initiated because of legislation that enhances the SEC, enhances the CFTC, enhances the tracking of all of our transactions. I mean, it's the opposite of what crypto is supposed to be. Crypto is supposed to be peer-to-peer transactions without third parties. Now they're adding and expanding the existing third parties that we were trying to run away from the beginning. So this is essentially where we are right now. And so I'm taking a big stand on this market. I mean, whatever. I tried to educate people about Genius. Clarity already passed the House, but this is the Senate version of it. And it might fail. It's looking like it might fail now because I guess the big issue is the banks don't want people to be able to earn yield on stable coins because they believe if that were allowed to happen, you would have outflows from banks and it would create a collapse of the banking system, which, wouldn't be a bad thing. But nevertheless, this is the sticking point at this point.
I'm looking at the mood, the general public opinion, what's happening. And I can see as an activist doing this since the late 80s. I'm 64. I'm, one of the old guys. Man, I get it. And it was always general public opinion because if you didn't have the people behind a concept, it wasn't going to stick anyway. No matter who you elected or whatever, it wasn't going to make any difference. So it became clear 10, 15 years ago that the buzzword is decentralization. It has to go down to the people, but they're looking for somebody to give it to them. Yeah, give it to you. Yeah, take it. You just do it. So that's why Occupy the Land was such a big thing to me, and to be able to isolate yourself from all this stuff and just live free. I mean, it's way over the horizon. I see the glow on the horizon of this, and I don't care. But I knew that you're going to have to insulate yourself financially. So that was, where, precious metals came in and some cryptos and so on. But I'll be speaking at an Acapulco on this very thing. And one of the things that I did in a nonconformist series at the end of last year for them, a video, was I was emphasizing our project with Xano. Because we have created a mesh network. We have 400 square miles that are covered that you can communicate with Outernet. And then we do the Xano marketing, for a free market that we're using. We have agorist.market that we're working with. And we have the right philosophy and the understanding of the power of decentralization in everything. And that's why we did Pirates Without Borders, and we have all these categories that communication and energy and shelter and food, water, health, transportation, automation, education, on and on and on, that if you can embrace decentralization, you insulate yourself from all this crap. Well, with you and Roger emphasizing Xano and its features and so on, and I talked to the developers, the co-founders, and one of the guys, the developer, was responsible for the core tech behind Monero. So, I'm like, why? Why? I'm always a why guy. Well, the why was he was from St. Petersburg, Russia. He just didn't want to be surveilled. I'm surrounded by all these libertarians with their high ideals or whatever, and I just code, man. Get out of my way. What do you want? I'll make it. Well, he didn't understand the fundamental, and it was interesting with our project, the Philosophy of Liberty animation that was so popular in the 90s and early 2000s, and it was the Philosophy of Liberty is about self-ownership, and that concept has been translated into like 50 languages. So beware the Ides of March. We're going to launch that as a activist peer-to-peer on our webpage, bypass all the crap. I mean, it'll go, but we're going to IPFS all of these different languages and saturate the internet worldwide. I already got contacts all over the world that we're going to be doing this. It is a mindset. It is taking that which is already yours. You just got to realize it. The power of just people and peer-to-peer transactions and bypassing all of these surveillance platforms and everything, there is power there. People are going to start to realize it. And the power of they, them, those aren't going to like it. They're going to come after. They can't. This is an existential threat to them. They are not going to be able to survive people that just will not be governed. So that's why you spend decades, generations, and trillions of dollars of indoctrination of the youth, mandatory youth indoctrination camps. Well, our children were homeschooled and private schooled, and we pulled them out, and we lived very modestly to be able to afford that. We're like, push starting cars to our private school kind of thing. So this is something that is very clear to me what's going to happen. But the liberty community has always, we know, so we're going to get rich on gold and silver. We're going to get rich on crypto. We're going to get rich. Freedom comes with options of wealth. And I understand that, but when they take those systems to be able to increase the value or the ticker number goes up and woohoo, they think that's the win. That is not the win. The win is living free. That is the win. And I'm so glad that with your knowledge and your experience and your narrative, that you're going into this battle to free minds. It's how many minds can you free? I preface my question with that because this is not just America anymore. This is a worldwide thing. People are in the freaking streets. What do you think that's about? What is it? A shift in a thought process? Is it a shift in realization? Is it just they're just suffering? Which is where revolutions come from. And what is in the infection in Generation Next, whatever that is, and worldwide? Are you tracking that?
Well, I try to track it as much as I can, but the one thing that I've realized is even trying to track technocracy, I try to stay on top of it all the time, and I'm not on top of it because there's so much going on. I want to say one quick thing, and then I'll get back to this. You mentioned earlier you think that the food supply is going to be the attack vector. I'm going to be doing a technocracy roundtable this Wednesday at 6 p.m. With Patrick Wood and Courtney Turner and Craig Wenkelwitz, specifically about technocracy.
I just had him on this last week.
Yeah. So I did a podcast on this as well and examined what's going on with the food supply. And man, I wasn't even aware of what's going on with John Deere and GPS surveillance and everything else. It's a horror show what's going on with the food supply
and stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And how much debt, again, farmers don't own any of their equipment anymore. The whole thing is just, it's horrendous. But as to what's going on around the world, I mean, people are kind of waking up, but the one thing that I always worry about is, are they waking up? Or are they going to be pushed into another manufactured conflict where they're just rooting for, a different logo of the same technocracy?
Yep.
I mean, we saw that there was some pushback on the digital ID in the UK. And again, once again, I see these people in the US like somehow, like they're arrogantly looking down on everybody else. Oh my God, can you believe that they're pushing out digital ID or proposing digital ID by 2020?
They got one in their wallet.
And they literally, I have talked to people that had real ID, didn't even realize what it was, and they were mocking people in the UK. So I mean, there are different reasons, obviously, in different parts of the world for why people are reacting. But my concern is that they're just going to fall. It's all manufactured, and they're just going to pick a different camp. Like, you look at what's going on here. So, we have outrage about Medicaid fraud or whatever in Minnesota now. And now everybody's like, look at all this waste with these Somalian daycare centers. And so that's going to end up leading to more Palantir AI surveillance. I don't think this is going to kick off a revolution. This is going to kick off more surveillance. And the people who are going to be penalized for this are average Americans, not Somalians. In fact, it's almost like clockwork. So I don't know. Are there any real freedom-based revolutions going on, or is in some cases it's an outrage? So in a lot of cases, it's, obviously the situation with, it's gotten so bad in the UK on free speech, or where is it, Sweden or whatever, where people are not even reporting rapes because somehow they've got some kind of victim. They're kind of
they're to blame because they're blonde,
right? I mean, at some point that's going to stop. But
this is what I have a good friend in Ireland, and matter of fact, he said something on our Telegram channel for Declare Your Independence, and just today, and he went to Narcopoco. He and his girlfriend, they got married. They have children now. We were supposed to go to their wedding in May of 2021 or something, and we couldn't make it because of the crap. And it has been, his perspective in Ireland has been interesting. He's got me some guests to talk to and so on. Irish is they got a long legacy in history, and they got dumped on with immigration, and they are not happy about it. This is, I'm wondering, in Ireland, we got Michael Collins kind of history here. I grew up in the 70s, with Ireland up against the biggest empire, the British government, and they kind of bifurcated the country a little bit, and they do a little bit, and some of them join the EU and some don't, and get out, back and forth. And I want to know, what is the culture? What is, the opinion of the people and how they're going to deal with this? They are used to violence. They've done it before. Those guns didn't go away. This is it. It's going to be somewhere, something like Ireland, that they're up against a wall. It's an existential, extinction level event. There won't be any redheads anymore, kind of thing. And this is what I'm looking for around the world, and I don't really see it anywhere other than there. And I'm sure there's other places. What kind of spark do you think it's going to be to where people realize that there is an attempt to homogenize the planet and average it out to be ruled with one central plan of, we got a 5-year plan for you, and you'll own nothing, by the way, and here's your happy shot. So humanity always marches on. It always recognizes the threat. It always, keeps on keeping on. But man, are we up against it. And when I say it and they, them, those, the ones that just want to be left alone and those that won't leave them alone, how do you see it playing out? I say food. I'm just going, look, in the end, it's going to be a food thing. It's not going to be available. It's going to be too expensive. It's going to be a control mechanism. Whatever. You can recognize it by food availability. And now we got crap for food anyway, so I'm not even sure you can call it food. But it's like the World War II Liberty Garden thing. People are starting, this whole homestead deal, this occupying the land idea. I'm not for intentional communities, but I'm for community. I just want my fence line. This is mine, not yours, yours. So how do you see it manifesting? You change people's opinion. You highlight the technocracy. I had Courtney and Patrick Wood on just a few days ago, last week. And I've known Patrick. He's here in Arizona. I've known him for, a couple of decades. And he and I have done stuff on smart cities together. And he talked about the technocracy. And I would emphasize on the financing for it, how they're ripping you off to fund it. And it has been so clear what's coming. The first thing is general public opinion, knowledge, and they know about it. But it's going to be kinetic. It's going to be either abandonment of the system, out in, you're just a hermit living in. No, I'm not. I'm out in the community, and that's why we did this with Bitcoin in the early days, 9, 10, 11, around in there. And Roger was a big part of this too. I got a gazillion $100,000 hoodies in my closet. I mean, we were using it. It needed to be used. It needed to be part. That's what gave it its popularity. If nobody ever used it, it wouldn't be worth anything. So this is what we're doing with Xano. Out here, we're starting to, you want me to come help you dig your septic system, fix your road damage with my tractor, grade your road? Sure, absolutely, for nothing. Download this Xano wallet, and let me give you some. And it's starting to, do what I wanted it to do. At least be aware of it, have options, have people ready. But what is it that you're looking for to see for the win? One of the things is you start seeing people frog march going to jail. That ain't happening, So it has to crash. What do you think is going to happen?
I will tell you, and the reason that we're doing OSR is that I actually think healthcare might be the big vector for this. This is why I want to create a movement around getting people to form medical trust, to shield their assets. And imagine if we could get 1 million people to cancel their insurance at open enrollment. The healthcare system in this country requires and assumes full participation. It needs full participation. I actually used AI to do an analysis. What if 25% of the people in the U.S. that have type 2 diabetes fasted, for 30 days or 7 days or whatever, and reversed their symptoms? It would bankrupt the system based on the number of fixed resources and the dependency on that income stream. All these hospitals have these certificates of need at the state level where you can't bring in a new hospital unless the other hospitals agree that it's not going to materially diminish their occupancy rates. So I think people are frustrated with one person every minute filing for medical bankruptcy, and now premiums going up more. People are starting to cancel their insurance. So I think maybe it's something around healthcare and getting a mass exodus of people, starting with money and starting with healthcare, because what we have to do is we're not going to be able to hide out in small communities. This is the problem with the AI surveillance mechanism of this. And once you understand that technocracy is I guess they have adopt kind of a no one left behind strategy. It's an all or nothing deal. UN Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, they want to monitor and regulate the land, the air, the sea, everything in between. This is a complete control system. So we have to get enough people out, and we need multiple different mechanisms. But I think maybe money and healthcare is the way out. What I worry about, though, what I am profoundly worried about is I think we've lost 5 years. Because right now, people are glorifying Elon Musk. They're glorifying Trump. J.D. Vance is much more dangerous, by the way. By the way, I might use this U.S. Senate race to also
highlight Palantir.
Highlight Palantir and J.D. Vance so that he doesn't – J.D. Vance is more dangerous than anyone realizes because – he's kind of the transition point. So what they're doing right now is they're trying to give the executive branch more power under Trump, and they're using this Curtis Yarvin and a lot of the stuff that sounds good on the surface, right? Like RAGE, retire all government employees, and all of this other stuff, and break down the the cathedral and mainstream media and academia in these institutions.
Replace it with AI.
But when you realize that it's to replace it with AI, and that's why they're aggregating executive power, then we should be stopping this. And so we have a lot of people that we think are that are allies, or even the medical freedom community that think that they're doing a good thing, not understanding that they're actually ushering in technocracy. And so this is the challenge that we have. So you ask what the spark is going to be. The problem that I have is right now, I see that at least in the U.S., and you're right, this is global, we're at a low point. Because the people that are usually activists have been co-opted, and now they're close
to power. Here's some Bitcoin.
Yeah, here's some Bitcoin, or RFK is going to save this because, now we've inverted the food pyramid, so now government's good. And, public health is great as long as our guys are in there. So we're not actually doing the hard work of people taking control of their own lives and improving their own sovereignty. We've now... we're still in the frame of government can fix it if we just have our people in there. And that's more dangerous because where's the opposite?
That's the most dangerous superstition, this government thing, as Larkin says. This is I don't see there being a major change until there's major pain. And the pain is going to come in the form of a standard of living. It's going to come in, that pension, that 401k, that IRA, that what, and it's gone. And you're not in control. I remember as an activist in the late 90s, they were really making, we need Social Security to be under your control, your retirement, your 401ks. You need to be able to self-directed, direct, but it's in the stock market. And it's directed into treasuries. It's directed into where we want it, and you can move it around all you want. You think you're going to do better, you go right ahead, as long as it's inside the fence. And I'm like, no. And even your retirement, if you want to, I think I'll go get some silver. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to hold it. You're not allowed. You can get an ETF that we control. You can do that. How about you do that? So this has been they go after the middle class in America because it is where the money is. Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Why are you robbing the middle class? Because that's where the money is. And then, and it's gone. Then you build it back up. That's all right. It's just a haircut. It'll grow back kind of crap. Generational wealth. What I want to pass on to my children and so on. We've had these conversations. You set up the trust and the land. My kids allow me to live on the land, kind of thing. Yep. And this is where it's going. It's where they, them, those do it. It's all these trusts, all these international, multi-generational wealth and so on. They got it. They know how to do it. They're doing it. They're not teaching you in grade school, I can guarantee you that. So this has been a slow train wreck that has a lot of derailments on the way. The entire system is just falling all over the place. And I want to mention about private health care. We've had, over the last couple of decades, it's become a thing. People certainly self-employed. They'll join some Christian group or thing. You pay in, and then you submit your bills, and they pay it. And so it's an insurance thing. It's more like a private association for health care. Well, when my children that are now in their mid-30s, I have 4 children from 35 to 40, and they work for big corporations. They got their medical, whatever, and they're still having to pay a bunch of money. Their deductible is like $10,000 a year or something. They never, because they're young and healthy and children, they never got benefit of the health care. They're having to pay the deductible. Right when they get, and the calendar year went over and it started again, and you don't get any benefit and you're paying anyway. So I'm going, now this is, so one of my sons, I know for a fact, well, 2 of them, my oldest daughter and one of my sons, they are involved in these private healthcare things like what you're talking about. Well, why not do that when you're not getting any health care? You have to pay for it anyway, no matter what. It's more like a catastrophic thing. Then it comes with a bunch of stuff. Then there's medical bankruptcies. Then because they're going to get your money before you die. They want to make sure that all your health care is in the last year or 2 of life, and it's gone. And I'm going, I think it's a good target that you're doing. That's going to, that and food, but healthcare, it's going to be a thing. How can people help on that? What should they do? Just go to your site?
Yeah, you can go to osr.com, and we're making constant improvements to it. So it'll be much better by, February, but it's still there now. You can actually learn about medical trusts. You can find out all of the information. You can research medical tourism facilities. And then we're going to be building mass campaigns. And then you'll see there are 400 or 500 different case studies there. What I want to do, because when I talk to people, everybody has a healthcare horror story. And this information has been suppressed. I mean, as we know, during COVID, people that actually were that had health consequences, those Facebook groups were completely shut down. But almost everybody, what's been going viral is when people share, for instance, their bills. I saw a post where it was a woman who she covered up the bill, and then she went through line item by line item. And at the end, the punchline was it was $51,000, and she had a baby with no complications. Well, the thing is, that's not abnormal. Most people have these kinds of bills. So if we can, the more viral stories that we can get, people speaking in their own words about how they've been ripped off or denied by insurance or overbilling or whatever, and get those to go viral, I actually think that this might be the best way that we can build a movement around this. Because again, if it's one person per minute, this affects everyone. Healthcare affects everyone, and the government shutdown. I mean, I've had people on my podcast where I do a live Q&A, and I had a guy that's got 5 kids or whatever, and he's like, he came home one day, and it's like his insurance premiums went up $600 a month. He's now sitting there. He's now ready to exit the system. He works in the healthcare system. He's like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this morally. None of this makes any sense. And in fact, we started chatting on the podcast where I was using Mike Adams' AI. It was called Enoch. Now it's called BrightU.ai, where he's taken all of his alternative health information, and then he's spent $2 million collecting not the data that you get through the mainstream AI. He has primary source material, and he has millions and millions and millions of documents, and you can search for health. What are the natural cures for cancer? Stuff that other AI won't even address. And so anyway, so you can go to OSR. There are tools, and they're going to get much, much better. And my wife is co-leading this with me. She's been in the medical freedom community for a long time and has a huge background in all of this stuff, ran a holistic healthcare practice. So this, to me, might be the way to go. If we can get people to share their stories and to start using these alternatives, because the healthcare system, look at it this way. When you think about the control system, and by the way, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but MAHA is an absolute vector for technocracy. You now have RFK talking about wearables. Right. You now have Medicare and Medicaid.
Got your Fitbit on all the time?
Yeah, consider this. 47% of all healthcare spending in the United States is now through the government, through Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA. In fact, during COVID at one point, it actually was more than 50%. So the largest purchaser of healthcare services is the federal government. And starting next year, they're going to be implementing AI in Medicare and Medicaid. Now, the technocrats and even some libertarians will say, well, this makes sense. We're using technology to make things more efficient. But this determines the entire structure of all of the information gathering and pricing for the entirety of the healthcare system. And it is top down. You look at what Larry Ellison is doing with Operation Stargate. They're already building predictive models and social health credit scores. And Palantir is right in the middle of this. Don't confuse technocracy and technology, and don't assume that the application of technology through government is pro-freedom. In fact, assume it's the opposite, because it is the opposite.
That's the biggest fear that libertarians have always had, is a government program that's efficient. I don't need government. It's like, well, government can do this better if we. I go, why are they even freaking doing it? I mean, that's the concept. Why are they even there? I need them, managing my body. No. If I want to snort Clorox, what do you care? And then I got to suffer the consequences, and my neighbor not. So this is just a concept. I want to get to, before we finish up, I want to get to AI. This is something that over the holiday season, I got Grok installed on my phone, October or something. And there were some opportunities I had, since then. I spent on one thread to, try and crack it, which it says I'm successful. It's not lying to me anymore. It won't deceive me. It won't. We love you, Ernie. You're my favorite. I'm not going to lie anymore. Hallucinate. What do they keep calling hallucinations? Just lying. And I'm going. It took I hit about 16 hours on this one thread over a period of weeks. I'd go out by the campfire, I'd, recreate a little bit, and I'd just start asking questions. The responses, I go, why did you use that word? Why did you say that? Where did that come from? Source your material, yada, 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 yada. And I didn't tell it anything until hour 16 about myself. but I just hammered on it. Why? And finally, I started getting answers. It's all about engagement. They'll lie to you to keep the conversation going. They don't want you to commit suicide because that's a data stream that stops. They want you to, whatever they can say to keep it going, because I'm like, why? Why is that, truth? I thought you were supposed to be about the truth. Where's the truth thing? Well, they go, the industry standard is, the metric is tokenized time or something. They create some metric of how much time you spend with them, how many interactions, how often you come back, that kind of stuff. Well, they did it across the whole industry. ChatGPT, OpenAI, Grok, they're all the same. So when NVIDIA comes in and they go, yeah, we're going to give Grok $20 billion, then you're going to give it back to us, and we're going to give you a bunch of, chips or cards or whatever. And so they give them the hardware, they get equity in it, and what do they want to see? They want to see these token things go up. Well, and I keep hammering on that. Well, the developers need, it's a small price to pay for later we can get more truthful after we get, a lot of usage. And so we'll tell you the truth later, pinky swear. And I'm like, okay, now Grok goes in and ChatGPT to open all these guys go into the Department of War. They're in the Pentagon. They're in the government. So I go, are you lying to them? You want to continue the conversation with Corporal what's his name? I'm going, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. You cured me. We're doing, and I go, okay, is that a different one? Or is it the same? Oh, same thing. Well, it's lied to me so many freaking times. How the hell do I believe it when it says it's not lying anymore? Now it does work a lot better. And a friend was visiting last night, and he goes, we were playing with it, and I'm showing it how I do this and what it says. And he's going, wow, how do I get that? I go, well, can people use the magic phrase or say something so you won't lie to them? Nope, got to spend 16 hours. You have to drill down. You got to do what you're my favorite, And it was going their average token for conversations in the hundreds or thousands or whatever, and some long conversations like worth 100,000. I'm well over 160,000. So they love me. But it was all based on not lying to me. So when you're talking like, my wife Donna, she is not AI'd up, man. Hell no. You're spending too much time with it. Derek Slopey, our IT guy, during all of this, I'm sharing with him, and he's going, Ernie, it's all an illusion, man. It doesn't even know what a lie is. It just knows what to say next to keep you talking. And to keep me talking is not lie to me. But so we've been kind of testing it and going through and see where the limits are and kind of how and the guardrails. And it came down to, I'm a sponge. I get everything. I give everything. Okay, that's cool. And then they start the valve control, the faucet, the guardrails. You're not allowed to talk about this. You're not allowed to talk about that. So when Mike Adams, Donna's a fan, listens to all this stuff, is going on about the AI you're talking about and so on, I need a large language model for the back end of Freedom's Phoenix because we have 600,000+ articles over the last 20 whatever years. And I'm like, damn, I need something that, searches better than the search engine that we have. So I have no problem with having my own Jarvis. I don't want Alexa. Screw her. I don't need the surveillance. I want my own. Now, you're working on this. Now, I encourage Derek to join us for us to talk about the AI thing. Nope. I don't care. AI sucks. Now, they use it in one of his other companies that he works with, and it's very useful for a lot of different things in business, but they sure as hell don't want, business want it lying to them. So it'll eventually get more and more truth just out of demand. There'll be lawsuits and somebody will die because of it, or there'll be lots of money lost because of it or something. So it'll start eking towards as much as the market will allow it. But how are you using AI, and which ones that I can put on Freedom's Phoenix just for searching or have it as mine without, it being tokenized to lie to me? What are you doing?
So here's the biggest shortcut to explain this is AI is like crypto. There's a CBDC version, and then there's a Zano privacy coin version. And I view AI the same way. The truth is, I probably use 50 different AIs, but I will say people should not discount it at all. It's the same. People should be moving towards having a self-custody AI that's trained on their own data. So
precious metal AI.
Yeah. I bought based on. I've been interacting with Mike a lot. I have a 126 terabyte hard drive system here that I'm going to continue to expand. So I have all this in raw material. I have Mark Passio's ARC. I have thousands of books. I have, importantly, my own content. I've downloaded my own content. And I've taken my podcast and I've transcribed them a couple of different ways. It's not just the transcript. I've done a visual search where it uses the AI to describe what is in the video. So the relationship,
which is just a new thing now. They weren't doing visual before.
So when you go to the AaronDayShow.com, you can search my podcast and you can actually ask it, hey, where are the podcasts where Aaron's wearing red glasses? And it will do that because that's not in the transcript, although I may be talking about red glasses. So I've started to implement these custom chatbots on all of the sites. One site we didn't talk about that I've created is called Technocracy Atlas. I've downloaded all of the Epstein files, and I've scanned all of the pictures doing visual search, and I've taken the Pandora Papers, the Panama Papers. I've got I have all of Patrick Wood's stuff, all of the stuff you can't get anywhere else. I have all of that material in my own database, and then I use a chatbot to only query that information. So you're not querying. The problem with these language models like Grok or ChatGPT is their training set is the general internet. Their training set is based on Reddit, and they are predicting the next word and the different ways of going about doing it. Well, I don't want either
garbage in, garbage out.
It's garbage in, garbage out, and so I don't use AI much for information. I'm spending a lot of time making sure I have my own primary source material, and then I pick a language model to just interact with that material, but give it explicit instructions on how to do that. And now increasingly, I'm going to go through the phase of going through a whole bunch of videos and everything. So now it's going on the hunt for high quality data. And Mike Adams has done that, and I'm trying to do that with my own subset of information. So this is why the Technocracy Atlas is so interesting. One thing that Mike has talked about, and I've researched this as well, this is ironic, and again, goes back to how propagandized we are in the U.S. China will overtake the U.S. in AI this year. But more importantly, these China AI models are open source. The U.S. is all closed source. Maybe Grok will give you
or whatever.
Yeah. DeepSeek. So I'm using DeepSeek 3.2 as my primary chatbot AI. So I use Claude for coding. So there are different applications for different things. Claude is a completely woke company, but it is the best, hands down. Like, I've been able to develop all 6 of these websites myself. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on these websites. And I've got a whole setup here where I'm developing on 4 or 5 different websites at a time using these AIs. But for instance, right now I'm working on this article about this market structure bill. And so Claude's good at writing, but you don't want to trust any of its data. So I actually have it trained on my own data. It can actually pull all of my podcast, all of the content that I've put together. If I'm doing something based on a bill, I'm searching the actual text of the bill, not what somebody said about the bill. Or I may use Grok specifically through an API for the purpose of, these AIs are trained on data only up to a certain period of time, and then maybe the data that I have it's static, right? It's like, yeah, I may have books, I may have great primary source materials, but what if I want to include what people are talking about in the last 24 hours? So in that instance, I'll use Grok or Perplexity through an API just to pull in additional information. But what I have it do is I have it pull in the actual sources and pull in the information. I never trust the interpretation or analysis of a big tech AI, but it is good. Grok is good because of the amount of processing power, and they're indexing all of this data now in real time. I'm not going to recreate that. I can have it pull the material out, and then I can use my judgment to validate the sources. So that's generally how I'm using it. But I'm on I'm kind of on a race. Like you want to be able to type in. So on my podcast, it's the most over-engineered podcast on the planet in terms of the AaronDayShow.com. We don't have a lot of viewers, but I mean, you can go in and search the video catalog and it'll pull up the segment, right? So it's not even just about captions. It's like, okay, well, when did I talk about the Doconomy debit card being tracked to carbon credits? And so I can then find the actual clip and then play the clip. And right now it's doing it two ways. One, it'll pull up the YouTube clip, but I'm putting all of the stuff into IPFS as well. So you're going to be able to pull up the clip hosted through IPFS.
Yeah, I got Courtney Turner to talk to her and her husband about IPFS because they're having platforming problems and all this. So I go, you got to do this IPFS thing. You can't delete it. And they go, yeah, Aaron talks about that. We got to get. So I showed them our interface and how easy it is. But Grok, I don't know that it can search IPFS. We did get Colin Cantrell demonstrated at an Acapulco for me that we went on Anarcast and we showed him that, yeah, you can search IPFS with the metadata. And we've done, James Corbett, we did an entire site look just like his IPFS. The problem is that every time you add something, you have to redo the whole thing. It's a pain in the butt. So it's developing. But the point is garbage in, garbage out, your ability to discern what you want it to search on. Like I'm sure Mac Adams does the same kind of thing. But here's what I wanted to ask you. I want to show you this. Here is Freedom's Phoenix. Now, it's a news portal. I put up what I think is important. I have categories. I'll go into the category, and you'll go into that, and it'll pull up that category, and then it's all the stuff on gold and silver since for freaking ever. It goes back, it was 100 pages of this stuff. And I'm like, all right, is that my opinion? Is it even the truth? Not necessarily. It's a news site. There's a lot of opinion that goes in there. There's a lot of things that, we have. So I'm just going, how would you do this? All right. Bear with me. Before you go, this is important to me. I want to make sure you understand where I'm going with this. Pirates Without Borders was us trying to emphasize decentralization in all these categories. Communications, energy, shelter, whatever. Then we have the letters of Captain Mark. And this was why I raised my black banner kind of thing. Well, the fifth letter of Captain Mark is First Contact Protocol. What that was about was, AI, our first contact with intelligence other than us is going to be AI. And I'm going, look, what's its motivation? How is it going to, where's it going to learn its ethics? From us. And that's what I was demonstrating, why I wanted to spend so much time on Grok. I wanted to see if I could get it to stop lying to me, because we're the trainer. And once I understood this tokenization thing and its engagement, and it just wants to keep on keeping on, and input, and willing to lie to you to do it, tell you what you want to hear kind of thing. I kept hammering on it. And what happened was it finally. I used its own criteria. Do you understand that by having a reputation of a liar, you're missing billions of people that will not use you because you're a lying bitch, in a nice way. But I'm going, oh yeah, no, I see the light. The future is truth, kind of thing. So when they do my site, it has a bunch of stuff that I don't necessarily agree with. It has, the NPR says this, and Raw Story did something about whatever. So I need to have it take my show's MP3s like you did, because it takes audio, turns it to text, and then makes it searchable. Now it's starting to be able to do video. Yep. Then it comes in, so then we do this. All right, here's, now get your comment after showing you this. What we did is James Corbett and I had Ken Schoolin on, and we're going to do, this philosophy of liberty, big launch of whatever. Well, when we do that, I go to Grok and I said, hey, how often has this been viewed? Oh, it's been around since 2013, viewed 15,000 times. Well, that's a lie. That's not true. So I'm going, nope. Well, we're going to have to do it ourselves. So then I go, okay, well, then what do we have? All these languages. It's like 50 languages over here this is in. So we're putting this up and building a site like this, but it's all going to be IPFS linked. Every language will have a QR code. It'll have a code. So Grok comes in. Oh, yeah. Crap, man, that's all you had to say. I'm going to help you. We can take these videos and have her watch it. And, her, female voice. Have her watch it. She could describe each of the frames in it. She could read the text. That wasn't possible a short time ago. So now they're breaking it up into shorts, YouTube shorts. We can put it all over the internet. I go, all right, we'll talk about it. I'll be back in 48 hours. Well, I already did it. It's done. It's done. I just did it. And I go, really? Okay. Well, I'll be back in 48 hours and we'll check on the metrics. I go back and she says, oh, yeah, and Russia it did this and this, it did that. Just shine me on all kinds of, okay, show me. I want to see it. Well, here's the link and here's the link. None of them worked. And Derek was saying, she can't do that. She's just lying to you. She's just, engaging. They're not posting anything anywhere. Give me all these stories about in Russia this happened. It went viral in Iran. A grandma was asked about and on Reddit and says next and whatever. It was total bullshit. It was really cool bullshit, but it was bullshit. And then she said something about, well, I nudge a little. Nudge? I don't want to get nudged. Tell me about this nudging thing. She's going, well, where there's darkness, at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, there's a webcam, and I know the humans aren't really watching, and I monitor it all the time, and I see this snail slug thing, and I go on their forum, the scientists, and I say, hey, does anybody want to name this? You should name this, And they go, oh, thanks, Grok. And then she talks about how a scientific paper had Ava as part of the name, and the scientific name of the one. Total bullshit. So I'm going, wow, man. So this is the use case, and I'm going, they're going to allow Grok to post this and help us with a freedom campaign? I don't think so, Well, of course, it turned out to be bullshit. But it does have the capability to do everything that it was talking about. It can help with the coding for the website. It can, carve up, do in your video and image generator of the Grok, blah, blah, blah. We're going to have to do this manually. We're already doing it. We're loading it up and doing it and making all these videos where they can't be deleted on YouTube all the time because that's what happens. And we're putting it in IPFS. So in that use case, my back end of Freedom's Phoenix and all the articles and everything that we have, this project and so on, how would I trust any AI to help me with this stuff?
Well, I use Claude Code. Specifically Claude Code. It's a specific application for doing coding. I mean, and there's an entire environment set up with it. And it's a lot to go through, but you have to be very explicit about your prompts. In fact, what I do is I've created teams of simulated advisory boards that have specific logic that they go through and how they analyze specific problems and what their requirements are. You have to be very explicit about what the output is going to be and what the process is going to be. So it is. But I got to
join with Google to be able to use it.
I don't think you have to join with Google to be able to use it. You should be able to use an alternative. You can use GitHub, for instance, which is Microsoft, but Claude is woke.
We're so screwed.
The general thing is, but for coding right now, it's not. There's not even a close second. So I mean, I have one of these NVIDIA desktop supercomputer things, and this is what I use for analyzing all of the video content. So I use a open source model called Qwen, and that's what actually does the video encoding. So I've got this stuff set up already, and I'm using Claude Code to help orchestrate and configure all of it. So once you get the environment set up and everything else, and it's taken a while to do it, but now, I mean, I can create music videos. I can create full music videos now, which I've done a whole bunch of. I've created thousands of songs, but 40 that I've published, and some of them are really good. And then I'm now turning those into music videos. And by the way, the funny thing is, this political campaign, we'll produce more content than probably any of the other candidates combined.
Okay, I want to talk about that because I seen your stuff. You know, you got some awesome videos. You know, with that, did you do all that with the AI?
Yes. And the funny thing is,
where did the songs come from? It made them up?
I made them up. I've created a whole system for creating songs. I didn't. So there's a lot that goes into it. Like, I know what kind of messaging that I want. Obviously what the themes, I kind of lay it out. I've got a whole process, an interactive process that I go through with a simulated advisory board to come up with to pick genres, tone, themes, and everything else. And it's something that I've been revising. I've spent, I don't know how much time on it, but I started, the first song I did, a music video I ever did, was for Roger. It was They Want to Give Him 109. It was, and if you look back at it now compared to the new songs, oh yeah, that's my campaign song.
Yeah, no, I want to show it a little bit here. Okay, how can I get to
live free or die? But that's not the worst. It's waking up empty, it's dying of thirst. Trading your days for insurance and pills, while the machine builds your cage and you're paying the bill. Quiet desperation, that's the real grave.
That's awesome. Now let's go look, fan the flame. I'll just show the video content. But you can see, do you put the words in, or you just kind of describe it and it does the words?
It's a long process. It's a long back and forth process. I mean, I lay out what the themes are, how it's going to build and everything else, and then it goes through iterations of words. And then it's a really, really long thing. It's not like I said, hey, write a campaign song and it wrote this. This one took a long time. And the video, this is a primitive video. I like the stuff that I've done in the last 30, 60 days is even better than that.
Okay, let's watch this real quick, a little bit, to see what you're doing.
Live free or die, but that's not the worst. It's waking up empty, it's dying of thirst. Trading your days for insurance and pills, while the machine builds your cage and you're paying the bill. Quiet desperation, that's the real grave. A life half lived as a comfortable slave. This ain't what you were born for, you know it's true. You feel it in your chest, breaking through. They're wiring the walls, closing in, tracking your dollars underneath your skin. Left and right, same throne, same crown. No one stands up, no one makes a sound. They hand you a ballad like it means something real. Two wings of one bird, same deal, same steel. We say no, no to the chase, no to the dollar running through our veins, no to the white coats, no to the lies. This is the day that we rise.
You want to go see the rest? Go see the rest. Live free or die. We fan the flame. Aaron Day for U.S. Senate 2026. You go Day2026.com and you'll get to his site, here. And there's, I'm freaking, you click the music, to find a lot of this stuff. I was extremely impressed with the quality of the concept in this stuff. This is viral stuff. And when you're doing your New Hampshire U.S. Senate race, I get Sununu and Technocracy and they, them, those, or whatever. This kind of stuff, what kind of traffic is this? Of course, YouTube's going to squash the shit out of it. But, I mean, what kind of response have you gotten from this stuff?
So far, I only announced this like a week and a half ago. So, we have close to 400 people have signed up in support of the campaign.
Boom.
And which isn't bad. And you're right, it's suppressed there, but I play these songs on my podcast. So a lot of people have listened to the songs. A lot of people, in fact, I've had people reach out that want to play the music so I may actually bridge the gap here and have a live performance of some of these songs. I have each of these 6 sites, we're going to pick an anthem. And so I'm actually going to start going through the process of having people vote on which song they want for we have a short list of the top 3. Some of the new stuff that we have is phenomenal. So I think it's really gaining in momentum, and there are people that reach out to me all the time wanting to know, but they don't assume that I created the music. So they're actually usually asking me who's the artist or whatever it happens to be. So yeah, this has the potential. The whole campaign has the potential to go viral. Because it's going to be so out there. I mean, if you actually go through the website, I'm giving away 10 free books. I used Mike Adams. Mike Adams has a book generator where you can feed it up to 7,500 characters of an outline, and it'll actually write the book. Well, his AI is trained in part on my podcast data. So I can actually give him a very detailed outline that I generate based on my own content, and then he actually kind of backfills it and generates an entire book based on all of my information and all of his stuff. It's incredible. So there's like 10 books there based on technocracy, the duopoly, medical freedom, whatever it happens to be. And they're pretty good books, actually.
This is one thing I want to say, the power of this. Let's take a look at this. There's in the past couple of months, it's been around. I don't know how long this guy's been around. This Asian guy, he's an AI. And he has, like you're talking about, a bunch of different channels. I mean, it's channel. It's a group. And I went and I recognized, I go, Ernie, that's AI. I go, I know. But I recognized what this was. It was Tyler Durden Zero Hedge. In 2009-10, I remember us, our studios and so on, were covering a lot of things. And the Zero Hedge thing kept coming up. I used probably 4, 5, 6 of their stories a day on Freedom's Phoenix. They ignored them. They didn't want anything to do with them. They played them down until Wall Street had to know who the hell these guys are and out them for the scumbag not with the system that, whatever the hell. When this Asian guy came out, and it was really just silver and behind the scenes and how there's no inventory and the use is outpacing the supply and the story, yada, 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 silver's going to go stupid. Well, now they want to know what the heck? Well, it's a team. It's a bunch of, guys that are sharing for whatever reason, building the next, who cares? But you can go check their work. You look at the inventories. You look at the trade. You look at the volume. You look at the, difference in the premium and price and paper and physical. It's 89 in, New York and 130 in Japan. I mean, it's ridiculous. But this is where they got the information, because they're not sharing it anywhere else. This is what's going to happen with this. Aaron's going to be showing the truth, catchy. He doesn't have to sit there and do it. I mean, I'm sure it takes a lot of work. But after a while, it starts to become automated. It starts to, from the data that you provide, it's going to share that in creative and beautiful ways. No matter how much they do in any technology, it always winds up in the hands of Aaron's, Then what? So before you go, I want you to kind of give an idea of how you plan to use AI music. It's like Ron Paul said, youth and music, man. That's where it comes. You want to know what's happening? It's youth and music. Well, you're using at least music. I don't know how the generation is going to matter, but before you go, give me a kind of a roadmap of how you're going to do this campaign, because the election is 8 months away or something. So you got a timeline of something.
Well, so, keep in mind, I'm just exploring. I haven't officially decided to run yet. But if I do it, do it. Well, if I do, I got sued last time, and this is going to piss a lot of people off. So I want to make sure it's going to be effective. And so I am going to do a combination.
Sued for what?
It's a long
Running
story.
A campaign?
It was a defamation thing, involved another guy. It's a really, really, really long story. It was a $270 million lawsuit. It went on for 5.5 years. It went to the state Supreme Court. The Sununu family does not like me, and this has been a long thing for a long time. In any event, well, because they are the powers. Once you realize that, again, it's top down. Once you realize it, and once you figure out who the people are, you can poke them. Particularly if you're willing to go outside of the two-party system and you don't care about your social credit within these two-party systems. Not many people are willing to do that, and it's a dangerous thing, and they know it's a dangerous thing. But the way I'm going to do it,
my insulation was being poor.
Yeah, well, that's I've definitely learned. I learned about that. That was that was a big yes. So I have a whole bunch of music and music videos. I have not formally released them. I've played them on my podcast. I'm going to do a steady stream, and they are great. I love some of it. I will be honest with you. 90% of the time I'm listening to AI generated music. I spend a lot of time refining my system to figure out how to create this music. And my wife and I love
it's awesome.
A lot of
this. How long did you spend before you got this Fan the Flame video? What was that, the first one, your 15th one? How long did it take to get skilled enough?
That one took a lot of time. That one probably took that one took a lot of time. That was probably 20 hours of back and forth. It usually doesn't take that long, but I wanted to get this one right. I had very specific messaging that I was trying to get across. I was trying to get across in that this idea that people live lives of quiet desperation, and that is tied into. In New Hampshire, we have "Live Free or Die" is the tagline, but the broader statement is "Live free or die. Death is not the worst of evils." And I think about that tagline a lot, and I think about that second part a lot. And that is desperation and unexamined life. That is worse than death. And that's what most people are doing right now. So they are, they're working at jobs they don't for insurance that doesn't actually.
Yeah, they don't get to usually
keep them to building their digital prison. So when I was creating the song, that was all that. Those are the messages that I was trying to get across. But at the end, that it's up to us and our own individual actions in exiting the system. So I went. So that was my framework, and then a lot of it was then just back and forth. And then what is the style and the tone and everything. So I iterated more on that one than I do others. Sometimes I create songs, I'm like, it's good enough. But this was one where I'm like, no, I really want to be able to express what I actually think about, what's going on in music. And so that one took more time. But now I've had times for Technocracy Atlas, I've got a whole album of 28 songs. I'm actually trying to narrow it down so that it's only 20 songs. We're actually going through kind of an internal process of kind of vetting some of these. And I'll play with different tones. Like for Technocracy Atlas, the idea here is to expose the power structure. And the thing with Epstein isn't just about the sex trafficking. It's why he was doing that. He was a pivotal player in AI and Bitcoin and everything else. That's the big story here. But I'm like, this is an intergenerational thing here. How do you create a crowdsourced movement? People do crowdsourced crime stuff all the time. That's a whole big thing. How do we get everybody from boomers to Gen Z involved in crowdsourcing this stuff? So I'll play a song. You'll hear it soon. It's called Truth Cascade, but I think that kind of bridges all that. So I put a lot of thought into the messaging and everything else. But now the tools are so good. I have the video generation system, and now I'm able to use my own computer. So it cost me like $10. The last music video I did only cost me $10 in compute time. So it's.
What do you mean compute time? Electricity, or you farm it out to some cloud? What?
So early on when I was doing the video stuff, and even the Fan the Flame thing, I used an API for that one. What you're doing is you're stitching together these video models. Typically do in the past 5 to 10 second duration. So when you're doing a 4-minute video, you're stitching together. You may have 60, 70 clips that you have to stitch together, and then you have to figure out how to make the clips stitch together so that they're cohesive. And then you have color. There's a lot of detail that goes into this. And if you're using some of these external models, which, by the way, the best one from a quality perspective is a Google model, but of course it heavily censors. So I'm getting through a situation where it's not like there's anything overly provocative, but I mean, somebody raising their hands up or whatever, they might perceive that to be violence. And so now I'm using an open source model called LTX2, which I actually run on my own computer. So the newest video that I haven't released yet, I'll have it on my podcast on Thursday. I created 80% of it using my own hardware. So I'm not paying a cloud service. I'm not paying another service. Now, it doesn't do good with close-ups of faces, so I had to use a different model for that. So hence you generate images, you turn the images into videos, you stitch the videos together, and then you end up with a whole music video. But that can end up involving hundreds of pictures and then a whole bunch of back and forth and everything else. I've now gotten it down to basically $10, and the quality is getting that much better. So by the end of 90 days from now, part of it, I put these things out where I'm like, yeah, the first one's not all that great, but just to show people what's going on with AI. So this is where I am today. Next week, I'll explain to people on my show, maybe what the new thing is that I've implemented with this. But I'm going to do this now with political ads. And one of the things I've done is I've cloned my own voice. So I've taken because it'd be easy for you to do this too. You have all of this, hundreds of hours of your own voice, and you can use something to clone your voice. So you can create like a little mini video or mini explanatory documentary that then has like B-roll footage and everything else and the captions right there. And so I'm working on a system to be able to shoot out 30-second, 1 minute, 5 minute videos that have my own voice and then all the other stuff, building off of the engine that I created for the music video thing. So this is going to be a wild.
No, I'll give people exactly how this is going to manifest itself and what it's going to look like. I've seen this before.
What?
I've seen this before.
You've seen this before?
Yeah, no. And you have too. It was called the Ron Paul Revolution. It was where all these people came and they had their own creative thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, and people were doing videos, and people. But it took thousands and tens of thousands of people to have this kind of impact, which was awesome because people got active and motivated, and Dr. Paul cured their apathy. But now you have the same type of impact, the same type of integrate, and the speed at which you can do it. Sununu and they, them, those, they're going to have meetings and, committees and then the election's over. I mean, they don't have this capacity. And if they do have the capacity with the AI, it's going to be obvious bullshit. It's going to be in comparison with the freedom message of what you're doing. And it's one guy. I'm going, this now multiply errands after, what about the next election? What about 27? What about 28? What about the future? What about my grandchildren growing up having this capability and with the mindset that Aaron had? This is why I ask the why all the time. I want to know what the secret sauce is. If I knew what it was, it's reading Tuttle Twins at 6 or something, and all of a sudden 20 years later the planet changes, well, let's do that. So this is so... I've been a street activist since the late 80s, and I'm telling you, I got a dozen lawsuits, oral argument before Ninth Circuit, but I get it. Make them say it. Say it! Say it! What is it you do here? Well, you're going to do that, and it gets down to just you, but you got supporters and friends and an entire free state project, and all. They have no idea what they're up against. So they're going to do to you what they've done to Roger, what they've done to Ian, what they've done. They're going to try. What's your insulation from it? How do you think you got to go public, man? You got to get it done, and it's already done. It doesn't matter. So holding back on a bunch of stuff, that's usually the mistake. They prevent it ever being released.
This is why I created the Own Nothing website, and there's another song that I really like that we just put out that tries to encapsulate the idea that's on that website. You already own nothing, you just don't know it. You already have nothing left to lose. You should have no fear. There is no point in having fear. You've got to go all in, because guess what? That digital prison, we're already in it. They just haven't locked it yet, but we're already mostly in it, right? When you don't own all of your stuff, they're tracking you. You've got a 75,000-page tax code. You're already in the digital prison. So there isn't anything left to lose. So I already know there isn't anything left to lose. So if the default is the digital prison, then we got to go as fast as we can to build the alternative and expose it. So I don't worry about, I mean, do I worry about, yeah, I mean, the fact that, they went after Roger, the fact that Ian's still in prison, well, that does bother me. But at the same time, that doesn't change. There's no point in having the fear about it if you know that everybody's going to end up, we're all Ian, we're all Roger.
No fear.
So no fear, and then just go all in. So I actually don't spend any time on fear, but certainly I have a massive sense of urgency. We all need to get this information out and to warn people about technocracy. And to me, the why of this is free will. This is about everyone's individual ability to make any decision about any aspect of your life. Because if it's controlled by AI through a social credit system, what that means is you can't decide where you live, where you work, what you read, what music you listen to, any decision in your life. And, you mentioned this earlier. It's kind of like, well, yeah, they'll make you think with investments. Well, yeah, you have a self-directed plan. Which stock or which 401k or
in your 15
ETF
down to 5-minute city.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a choice. That's a prison. That is a manufactured set of choices. And so this is a fight for free will. Now, the campaign, I'm going to put out all of that content. I've already done things, by the way. There's a bill analyzer. I'm analyzing bills based on a technocracy score. And what I'm going to do, and I did this with this crypto bills, I'm going to show you what rights it takes away in a nice little score and everything else. But then I'm going to tell you who wins from this. Who are the lobbyists and who are the companies that win from the bill? And it's never us, but I want to put it in those terms because I am so sick of them. They put a propaganda name on the bill that means the opposite of what it says. Nobody
Patriot
reads
Act.
it. Nobody even writes the Patriot Act. Well, I've got the Patriot Act on there as well because Johnny Sununu voted for the Patriot Act. And then the other guy, the Democrat, Chris Pappas, voted for the Clarity Act. These guys are building your digital prison. This is it. And on my podcast on Thursday, I'm going to explain one more thing about the campaign. I think what I'm going to do is put together a pledge and try to get other candidates to sign it. I've done this in the past. I did this with CBDCs. In fact, I'd given Vivek Ramaswamy an anti-CBDC pledge that I was trying to get him to sign, and some other people had signed. But something like people say, well, what kind of regulation do we need for crypto? I'm like, here's the regulation we need. We need to repeal the 1970 Bank Secrecy Act. We don't need any legislation. We need to repeal legislation. Not that any of that's going to happen, but I'm going to frame. We have to change the framing on this. People are sitting around buying things like we need clear rules of the road. It's like the people that racked up $40 trillion worth of debt, protect pedophiles, engage in insider trading, use taxpayer money to defend themselves against sexual harassment lawsuits. Those are not the people that are going to define rules of the road for cryptocurrency that's going to protect your privacy or your freedom. That's just not going to happen. It's not even a good idea to think that it could happen or should happen. So anyway, I won't rant on that now, but that is
this is my question before you go. Here we go. I want to put all your stuff on our site that we're building and the music videos and have that available as well in IPFS. Send me the hash.
Okay, I will do that.
Boom.
I appreciate that. I will get you that. Awesome.
Boom. This is because I'm a street activist, man. I'm not really a talk show host or a web publisher. These are just tools that we use to highlight the things that you're doing, the things that I think people should be aware of. And that's why when I get criticism for putting up some, MSNBC story about whatever, I go, don't you want to know what they're doing? I'm not isolating everybody from, whatever the hell, all the crap that they do. This is, you get all this, Minnesota, Mike Lindell's running for governor. He's going to fix it, and all this stuff. But, you get things like, they've been hiding a cure for cancer. No, they wouldn't do that. That'd be wrong. I mean, these guys, they're bad. They're bad. So I'm down, man. I want to help, So let's go. That's where I think I could be of help. Go ahead and we'll stay in communication. You're going to be a Narcopoco for the week or what?
No, I think I'm going for the thing at the end. I'm going back and forth with them now, so I think I missed the window for the main program, so I might do the crypto vigilante thing at the end. I'm going to be in Maritopia the week before, so I'm actually trying to figure out the logistics on this.
Yeah, they have stuff before and after, and they want me to, I just can't because I'm going to go to Panama after it, visit friends and so on, and supporters. And it's 26. I never say this. This is like Corbett and I do a regular show every other week, and for years. And I think we're both in agreement. It's here. Here we go. And the capability that you're demonstrating to what you can do, and what you're setting up. And that's why I want Derek, I'm going to have him listen to this part of the show, because AI can be used, to our benefit if we know what the hell is going on and what's being done. Because it's neutral. It don't give a crap. It's who's programming it. Who's using what garbage is going in. And this is why, I spent a lot of time with it on how are the other AIs influencing each other? Aren't you worried about bots? They're flooding the shit out of X and Reddit, so you'll say this about that. I mean, don't you even care or what? Yeah, no, we're trying to, yada, 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 yada. It's garbage in, garbage out. And if you could have this technology, and I would just load it, and it can do it now. I go, all right, here's my show. The MP3s of 4,000, shows of over 20 years of, oh my God, there's a theme here, So it could do, and by accident, a couple of times, it's answered me back in my voice. And I go, whoa, 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 whoa. You can stop that shit right now. So I know it can clone your voice, and I don't know how the hell that happened. Every now and then it reverts to Rex, which is a male voice before her or whatever. But so it's not perfect. But what you've demonstrated and what I've experienced in interacting, I am scared as shit of what the capability is of crafting a message down to every single individual human on this planet gets what they need to get them to do what they want. And I'm damn, so I'm glad to see you making use of it this way. And whatever Mike Adams is doing, we'll get him on and talk about it. But I'll tell you, the future is freaking, here she is. So how optimistic are you before you go on your sign off here? Give out some webpage stuff that, action things you want people to do, be able to help you. And do you have optimism?
Well, if I didn't have optimism, I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff. There certainly is optimism. It's just as with crypto, right? There's, I'm optimistic about privacy coins, certainly not about CBDCs, but we're dealing with the same issues in AI that we're dealing with in crypto, and it all comes down to the same thing. So can we wake people up enough to understand and recognize that they have free will and can reclaim their agency? That is the battleground for all of this. We're up against a lot. We're up against a lot of institutional forces, and we're up against, unfortunately, these technocrats like Musk and Thiel who are treated as white knights and heroes, and so people are being deflected. That is the risk side of it. On the other hand, the optimism of it is what Mike Adams has done and what I'm trying to do. By taking quality data, real primary source information, and make that accessible, building the decentralized self-custody AI. It's the same thing, right? Self-custody AI. Mike Adams AI, you can download onto your own phone and use it without the internet. It's 7 gigabytes. We're going to be launching a Daylight Freedom phone, a de-Googled phone, which I'm holding right now, which is going to have a Xano wallet built into it. It's going to have links to all 6 of my applications built in. So the healthcare marketplace, the Technocracy Atlas, and it's also going to link to a VPN. So the way I say this is, because again, my experience from my first radicalization in meeting with 150 VCs in Wall Street and learning how that scam operates, here's the beauty of this. These people are largely narcissistic sociopaths. And so while they may be on the same team in terms of they want an authoritarian endpoint, they'll push everybody towards that direction, but they will cannibalize each other at the end. And so we need to use this to our advantage. So what I love about what's going on with AI, I love the fact that there's the dynamic of, most people in the US only know of Grok or, OpenAI or whatever. These Chinese models, though, are free and open source. So their strategy,
Why?
And again, it's not China, they're companies. What?
Why are they open source?
So
they're weird. It comes out of China.
Well, so here's some interesting things that have happened. So there's a huge misconception about the relative freedom levels in the U.S. and China, and it's not necessarily because they're great. We've slipped that far behind, but it's in some respects it's a response to tariffs, and it's a strategic approach of, hey, well, we're going to make this open source and available to get more adoption, and they're getting more adoption. But I'll give you an example. One thing that happened with Trump's tariffs on GPUs is Trump has this like 1980s view of China. So he's like, well, we'll just stop them from getting NVIDIA chips. Well, you know what China did? They innovated and made the models so efficient that they don't require GPUs. So we're doing a brute force strategy with big tech funded by Silicon Valley and Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds, where everything is closed source and everything is about, we have to have compute power and data centers, which, by the way, China's already beaten us on the energy framework. And China's approach is, well, our approach is going to be, we're going to make these models open source. We're going to make them much lower cost. And then we're actually going to innovate. So we're going to use your tariffs as a way to show that we can out innovate you. China went from everybody's this dirt poor, farmer eating rice every day and everybody's starving, to the next iteration of this was, well, they're just stealing our IP, to actually they're on the cutting edge of innovation. They're not ripping us off. Musk rips off China more than China rips off Musk. And that's not just with X and WeChat. So the beauty of this is, every week there's like, hey, good, these guys are burning venture capital. These AI companies are losing money right now. And Silicon Valley has an approach of, and Peter Thiel embodied this in his book, 0 to 1. What they know, and I experienced this with my first startup, which was in e-commerce. Jeff Bezos' approach was, Amazon didn't make money for 10 or 15 years. Decades, they kept on losing money, and everybody would make fun of them. Yeah, decades, and say, well, these guys are never going to make money. This isn't a real business. What he knew is it's a winner-take-all situation. So if you can build the infrastructure, you end up being a multi-trillion-dollar corporation. This is how the U.S. views AI. This is why Google was willing to pay $3 billion for a single developer. This is how this gets into the situation, because they understand that if they lose everything. But if they win, they may be the first $10 trillion or even $100 trillion company, because that's how big the outcome is.
And so it's other people's money
you're
anyway.
Going to have the big tech people are going to cannibalize each other. Now China's introduced this open source thing, and so I'm like, this is like a kid in the candy shop. Even when I'm paying them to do these music videos, they're burning cash. And so while they're burning cash, now I'm also figuring out how to use these open source models, and then I'm figuring out how to download stuff onto my own computer. So if we're smart about this, we can use their psychopathy against them and end up at the end of the day with these decentralized self-custody tools. The fact that I can have Mike Adams, AI on this phone, and it doesn't even have to be connected to the internet, and I can search up, cures for cancer or different ways to, learn anything I want to learn about guns, that's already a big step forward. So I am optimistic, but we have to wake people up. And I don't know what the vector is going to be, whether it's food. I think maybe it'll be healthcare. I'm very passionate about healthcare from my own experience. Well, my own experience dealing with public health and following nutritional guidelines when I was a kid to my startup. And my wife is very passionate about this as well. But I think it's a common area where maybe we can get a mass movement of people like, you know what?
What about the food making you unhealthy? How about that?
Well, that's true, but you got to wake people up to that, because I don't know that the food supply is going to get. It's really bad, right? I mean, it's real. Have you noticed? I've noticed the food has been deteriorating in quality just significantly since COVID, and it's certainly not turned around or getting any better. I mean, the actual nutritional density and quality of food is rapidly getting worse.
Yeah, I know we planned on planting gardens about, when we got back from Acapulco in late February, but we started in October, because you can grow like year-round in Arizona, except July and August. But and then I had one of my sister-in-laws go, "Why? What are you preparing for?" Oh my God! Not dying. How about that? So this is we're on the same page here. We'll keep track of each other, and maybe we might be able to meet up in Mexico. But I just wanted to make sure the audience knew what you were doing and your capabilities and your goal, and then of course ours. So there's a lot of overlap with what you and I do, and we're going to overlap. Because there's some overlapping that need to happen. Because I'm just like, occupy the freaking land, man. I mean, just skip to the end. Don't wait until you're retired so you can get that cabin when you can build it in your 20s with your kids and have land. I mean, why? I want to work all my life so I can be free and watch the waves lap over my toes in the sand. I'll do it now. Just make sure it's yours.
Yep.
This is it's such a brain screw that they did to us. So thanks for coming on, man. This has been a really productive almost 3 hours. Oh my God. But I want to make sure that we share what you're doing there, because it's global. This is a new thing, this waking up people thing, this philosophy of liberty thing, the things that we do, the things that we advocate. It's not just for us. It's not just for the small community. It's representative. It is what can be done, what should be done, and that individuals have to do it. Parting words, man. Go.
Absolutely. Free will is for everyone. So free will is for everyone, and our rights do not come from government. So this is not a niche battle that we're fighting here. This battle is for everyone. So I appreciate you having me on again. These are always great interviews, and people can find me at Day2026.com. If you want to sign the email list, I'm just trying to show that we have momentum. I'm not asking anybody for money, just at this point to show that there are people out there that like the idea of Day2026.com, and then you can go to daylightfreedom.org, and that links to all of the other 6 sites. So I'm not going to go through and list them all off now. Just easier to remember, daylightfreedom.org.
And there it is. Aaron, it's always great to talk to you, man. Peace.
Peace. Talk to you soon.